The quest for their party's nominations has been fought on many battlegrounds.
This guy will say anything. Nasty guy. Now I know why he doesn't have one endorsement from any of his colleagues.
Whenever anyone points to their actual record, they start screaming, liar, liar, liar.
I am a progressive who actually likes to make progress.
I do not know any progressive who takes $15 million from Wall Street.
What has happened to our party? What has happened to the conservative movement?
The fact of the matter is Jeb has no foreign policy experience.
Senator Rubio, your 5 years as senator does not match up to my capabilities.
Tonight, once again, the people will pass ultimate judgment with their vote. The Nevada caucus and the South Carolina primary.
And good evening, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on a Saturday night. If you've been watching, then you know we have already projected the winner in the caucus this evening in Nevada. That is Hillary Clinton. It is being projected by NBC News when all the caucus votes are counted up. It will be Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders, and the punditry is already coming at full bore, saying she eked out a victory, and imagine what we would be saying had it gone the other way. More on that in just a moment. But in South Carolina, just to keep you updated, they are still voting for another hour, so it will be a while yet before we can announce any projection or results. South Carolina GOP primary still going to the polls. They have an hour to vote, and they've all been told locally, if you're in line by 7 p.m. Eastern, you will get to vote. You may have noticed, joining me, Rachel Maddow, welcome again.
Hi, Brian.
Good to see you.
This is exciting.
Mr. Ralston of our staff is already reporting Harry Reid picked up the phone a few days ago, called Nevada and said to the Restaurant and Beverage Workers Union, we know you're not going to endorse Hillary Clinton. If you could get your folks out, though, and help out, it would be appreciated. Mr. Ralston is saying that made the difference.
Well, it'll be interesting to see the overall turnout numbers. Turnout's always interesting in every race, but in this race between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, it's particularly important. That is Bernie Sanders' theory of the case. He's saying, listen, I may not look like your typically viable general election candidate, but the reason I'm viable is because I will excite new participation in the democratic process. I will get new people out. I will get people involved in politics who usually aren't. And watch me do it. That's how I can win. And if I win, that's how I'll get my policy platform enacted. So far, turnout for Democrats is down in Iowa compared to 2008. It's down in New Hampshire compared to 2008. We have to wait and see if it will be down in Nevada as well. If it is, you know, that may tell us something about who, you know, why Hillary Clinton won. But more importantly, it's going to be a challenge for Sanders going on in terms of whether or not he needs a new theory of the case for how he could win and how he could be an effective president. Turnout is always fascinating. In Nevada, it may be crucial in terms of the overall state of the Democratic race.
It may chill you to hear that Chris Matthews is heading up our Las Vegas bureau today. But, Chris, it was having watched hours of you that I heard Ralston say that the casino caucuses, the day shift workers who were allowed to come out and caucus, those were coming in Clark County, the environs of Las Vegas, so heavily for Hillary Clinton. And that, it turns out, turned it for her.
You know, I think it's an example that we have to pick up on ourselves, which is not all politics happens on television. It's not all speeches. It's not TV ads that are paid for. It's not free media where we give interviews to people. It's not debates. Things happen on the telephone. They happen in back rooms. They happen in labor halls where labor leaders still have strength. They can be engaged in pulling operations and get people out of their homes on a beautiful Saturday like out here. And it is gorgeous weather to spend several hours inside involved in this kind of wrestling match to see how you actually vote. Off the screen is what happened here. Harry Reid is not Mr. Charisma, but he is one forceful figure. Why do you think he's leader of the Senate Democrats? Because he can work the phones, he can work relationships, and he has a great set of antennae as to what's going to happen. He saw Hillary Clinton in trouble out here, and he put together the best organization, which he's done so many times before, to make things happen. And that included the working people here. If you come out here, you actually see people doing their jobs. It's an amazing place because you see the croupiers. dealing the cards. You watch the pit bosses standing over them with those grim faces. You watch the waitresses running around. You watch the concierges when you ask them, can you get me tickets tonight? So you see what their jobs are. They don't make a lot of money, but they all showed up today. 3-hour breaks according to MGM Grand. MGM that owns New York, which is our host here. So you really saw democracy in action, but it wasn't a TV event until our guy Jacob Sabaroff and, of course, Chris Hayes got in there and showed us a bit of it. And what was going on is people in almost this physicality kind of thing under a basket in an NBA game or a college game. You have to work your way physically to the corner you want to go to. You're being pulled back, wooed back by the other side. It is bracing to watch. And the Hillary Clinton people, backed by, in fact, led by Harry Reid, who says he's not partisan in this, baby, fat chance, they won. They won the inside game. They won, Rachel, at an inside game, and it was not a TV spectacular. It was good old time backroom politics.
I think that's always true in Nevada. I think that may be particularly true here. The culinary workers specifically, technically staying on the sidelines, but then as Ralston has been reporting, maybe at the last minute getting in there to drive up turnout. That is the way. Chris is exactly right. That is the way these things get won. We had a shot there just a moment ago of the Hillary Clinton, Kristen Welker's forehead in the lower right corner. Yeah. An excellent forehead it is. Yeah. This is where we're expecting Hillary Clinton to be speaking fairly soon. You can see the hall is full there. She's going to be giving her victory speech. We do have a statement from Senator Sanders already. Quote, I just spoke to Secretary Clinton and congratulated her on her victory here in Nevada. I'm very proud of the campaign we ran 5 weeks ago. We were 25 points behind, and we ended up in a very close election, and we probably will leave Nevada with a solid share of the delegates. As we wait for this Hillary Clinton speech, here on set with us, NBC's Andrea Mitchell, also our friend Nicole Wallace, who is a Republican in good standing, even though she sits here with me. We're going to talk about this with you guys in just a moment. Well, come on. It's still winter, even if it is a mild winter. But I want to go first to Steve Kornacki. Steve's been looking at, I think, specifically the way that Hillary Clinton pulled out this victory today in Nevada compared to her victory of a certain kind in 2008 over Barack Obama. How did it look this time, Steve?
Yeah, well, the short answer is very similar, although there's some surprises in that, too. Let me show you. So in 2008, 8 years ago, there it was. Hillary Clinton, by about 6 points, won this state. Now, a lot of big counties here geographically, that's a little misleading. More than 70% of the action is just there in Clark County, where Las Vegas is, where those big suburbs are. The only other real population centers in the state, you're going to see Washoe County. That's where Reno is. You got Carson City a little bit south there. And you got Elko. The rest of this is extremely, extremely rural. So what happened in 2008 was Hillary Clinton rolled up a big number here, won by about 10 points in Clark County, had huge support from Latino voters. That's how she was able to do that. Barack Obama did well in the northern part of the state, just not well enough to catch her. So the question was, how would that look today? And now, if I can get that to advance, here is what the map looks like today. And a couple things to point out here. So, look, this was the surprise of the day because the numbers are still coming in from Clark County. But Hillary Clinton is running where she ran in 2008. She is, I think, about 70% is in from Clark County right now. And she is running about 10 points ahead of Bernie Sanders. So that meant Bernie Sanders, if he's going to catch her, if he's going to win, he needs big numbers out of Reno, out of Washoe County. Well, right now, he's leading up there by about 7 points. 8 years ago, Barack Obama won there by 9 points, so he didn't hit the Obama number there. How about Elko? Elko, 8 years ago, Barack Obama beat Hillary Clinton there by 32 points. Tonight, the margin 9 points currently for Bernie Sanders. So he is doing well as Barack Obama did in the northern part of the state. He is not doing well enough to overcome the significant advantage Hillary Clinton had there. Just quickly, we can add, this is interesting, and this will be debated in the days ahead. We have these entrance polls. The entrance polls break things down every which way. The racial breakdown in this thing, very interesting. Bernie Sanders winning by 2 points among whites. Hillary Clinton winning by 54 among African Americans. And here's the one that's going to be debated. The entrance poll still showing Bernie Sanders ahead by 8 among Latinos.
Oh, interesting.
All right, Steve Kornacki at the board. Steve, thanks. And Chuck Todd standing by to talk to us. Chuck, you know what I'm going to say. First of all, East Coast media types don't understand the economic situation right now in Nevada, fourth worst unemployment in the entire country. And second, what Chris was saying, the power of old school labor organizers and their friends.
Well, look, we joke about the establishment. It's been used and thrown around so much we forget sometimes how to even define the word anymore. We know Sanders is running against the establishment, Trump is. But there is an establishment, and Sanders ran smack dab into a brick wall named the establishment. And I think that the culinary, when you look at these numbers in Clark County, it's a union-heavy county. When you look at how she did among union households, look, 3/4 of the participants weren't in a union household, but those that were, she won that fairly comfortably, same margin essentially as she won in Clark County, the largest county there. So I think it's a reminder, and that's why I said overall, this is an important day for Clinton beyond just winning one state. This is what I would now, I think it's going to be known as Sigh of Relief Saturday, because now the pressure turns to Sanders. Where's he going to win? This was his best shot early on at winning a state with a diverse electorate to puncture the myth that he can't win in states that have diverse electorates. If he couldn't win here, where does he win next? And he's got the next 10 days got to figure that out. South Carolina doesn't look so good. Look at those African-American numbers in our entrance poll in Nevada. He can't have a similar type performance and come with even striking distance in South Carolina. And then there's Super Tuesday. And right now they're only concentrating on the 2 caucus states, the 2 New England states, and Oklahoma. He's got to find a way to beat her in a Texas, in a Georgia, Tennessee, Virginia, the bigger states with some diverse electorates, but with majority still non-African-American electorates, at least in 3 of those states. He's got to find some place to win now. So to me, this is why it's so important for Clinton to win. She could run off a streak of victories now that give her a durable, maybe not quite insurmountable, but a durable delegate lead that will be very tough for Sanders to catch.
Chuck, can I just ask you about the delegate picture here? Obviously, one of the strange things to describe and explain about the race thus far between Sanders and Clinton is that he absolutely blew her out in New Hampshire with a 22-point lead. They ended up basically almost tied in terms of the delegates out of New Hampshire. We saw something a little bit similar in 2008 in Nevada, where Hillary Clinton won in Nevada. She won the popular vote by 5 or 6 points, but then Barack Obama actually got one more delegate out of Nevada. Is it possible that we're going to see something like that in terms of delegates tonight in Nevada?
Well, no, not in Nevada, and here's why. They actually changed a couple of the rules from 08 to prevent that from happening. So Barack Obama, more delegates, the Clark County area, essentially that first congressional district's worth more delegates this time than it was 8 years ago. There was an extra rural delegate 8 years ago that doesn't exist this time. So Obama won that one. There was one less for her to win within Clark County. I'm getting a little arcane here, but for what it's worth, Rachel, I had the same question, so I went and researched this, and you and I did not talk beforehand. So I did find out they had changed just the delegate allocation just enough that guaranteed that if you win this state-level delegate process, you're now going to have a majority of the convention delegates out of Nevada, too.
Chuck, I think you're just doing this so you can have a lot to talk about tomorrow morning on Meet the
Well, we do what we can. Hey, man, South Carolina, we don't want to give anything away. It's going to be a fun night. That's all I'm going to say. It's going to be a fun night, brother.
I don't know if that's an official characterization by NBC News.
Speak for yourself.
Can we call it a fun night?
Chuck Todd says fun night.
Yeah, really, that's our political director. That's the best game he can bring. Nicole and Andrea are here. Separate topics for you. I want to get your call, your take on Clinton before we preview South Carolina. What do you make of the victory she's managed to pull out?
This was a firewall for her, because if she had lost Nevada after virtually tying or losing Iowa, basically a wash in Iowa, and beginning clobbered in New Hampshire, what was she going to do going into South Carolina? She had huge advantages there, especially with Jim Clyburn now joining in. And that was very carefully orchestrated as well as the hidden hand, not so hidden hand of Harry Reid. The establishment is coming around her. And the other piece of what Rachel was asking about was the superdelegates, and they are all in her advantage. He has 3 members of Congress. She has all of the others, more than 150. And they all are voting delegates. They're not pledged, they're not tied down, but they are at this point committed to her. Unless she were to implode somewhere down the road, then they could legally, under convention rules, go elsewhere. So she needed Nevada. She needed to prove she could do this. And we have to see how the ethnic breakdown plays out. She's still losing young voters. That's a problem for her down the road, in a general election in particular. And we also have to see what Rachel was asking about and what you were all inquiring about is he bringing in new people? So far, we don't know that about Nevada. that is going to be the key thing, because if he can't prove that he has this magic and that the call for revolution and the excitement we see on the trail, I mean, I was there until last night, and her closing argument was flat and restrained, and he was exuberant and ebullient. I was in those very back rooms in the casinos talking to those workers, and their union asked them not to tell me on camera who they were for, so after the camera was off, I'd said, you know, where are you? And they said, La Hillary. La Hillary is what.
But then, Bernie, what? I mean, you do see tangible, real, non-anecdotal evidence of the enthusiasm. I mean, Senator Sanders turned out nearly 3,000 people in Sparks, Nevada last night.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
the crowds are there. The enthusiasm is there.
And very young.
The caucuses are tough. They're not primaries, and maybe not investing the time in showing up and voting.
Nicole, South Carolina is where the GOP race takes on a cruelty, both in the nature of the campaign, the modern post-Atwater history of the campaign, and the fact that most people believe the race narrows after tonight. How do you think the race narrows after?
Well, listen, Chuck called it fun. He can speak for himself. I mean, this is really, really like nails on a chalkboard for anyone deeply invested in the future of the party, which is all of us. I mean, I think this battle for the heart and soul of the Republican Party is reaching a point where denial is unhealthy. Donald Trump is our frontrunner. Should he have a wildly successful night tonight, which is what all the polls predict? They've never all been wrong before.
Well, not the NBC News of Wall Street Journal Marist poll.
Well, it is tightening. But let's
so
actually.
Lucky I can't call you on the months of denial you went through because we're going to go to Las Vegas.
Hillary Clinton about to give her victory speech tonight in Nevada.
Palace.
Thank you so much. You know, I am so thrilled and so grateful to all of my supporters out there. Some may have doubted us, but we never doubted each other. And this one's for you. I want to congratulate Senator Sanders on a hard-fought race here. And I want to thank each and every one of you. You turned out in every corner of this state with determination and purpose. Hotel and casino workers who never wavered. Students with too much debt and small business owners who never go off the clock. Tens of thousands of men and women with kids to raise, bills to pay, and dreams that won't die. This is your campaign, and it is a campaign to break down every barrier that holds you back. We're going to build ladders of opportunity in their place so every American can go as far as your hard work can take you. And to the thousands of volunteers and organizers who worked so hard in this state. To the more than 750,000 people who've gone to HillaryClinton.com and contributed what you could, the vast majority giving less than $100, and to the millions of people across our country who are supporting our campaign, thank you from the bottom of my heart. We hear you, we see you. We're incredibly grateful to you because we're in this together. We look at our country and see so much that isn't working the way it should. We see grandparents forced to choose between paying rent and buying medicine because a prescription drug company has increased prices 5,000% overnight. We see African-American families denied mortgages at nearly 3 times the rate of white families. We see small towns and rural communities hollowed out by lost jobs and lost hope. We see a rising generation of young people coming of age in a world where opportunity seems out of reach. And worst of all, we see children growing up in poverty or pain or fear. Here in Nevada, a brave young girl told me how scared she is that her parents could be deported. In South Carolina, I met kids trying to learn in crumbling classrooms and neglected communities. And then there's Flint, Michigan, where children were poisoned by toxic water just because their governor wanted to save a little money. So Americans are right to be angry, but we're also hungry for real solutions. In the campaign, you've heard a lot about Washington and Wall Street. We all want to get secret, unaccountable money out of politics. That starts with appointing a new justice to the Supreme Court who will protect the right of every citizen to vote, not every corporation to buy elections. And we also agree that Wall Street can never be allowed to threaten Main Street again. No bank can be too big to fail, no executive too powerful to jail. But if we listen to the voices of Flint and Ferguson, if we open our hearts to the families of coal country and Indian country, if we listen to the hopes and heartaches of hardworking people across America, it's clear there is so much more to be done. The truth is, we aren't a single-issue country. We need more than a plan for the big banks. The middle class needs a raise, and we need more jobs. We need jobs that pay well and can't be outsourced, jobs that provide dignity and a future. We can do it by unleashing the innovation of our entrepreneurs and small businesses. We can do it with new investments in manufacturing, infrastructure, and clean energy, especially here in Nevada, which should be the center of solar power. Some country is going to be the clean energy superpower of the 21st century. It's probably either going to be China, Germany, or us, and I want it to be us, and it will be when I'm president. We also have to do more to make it easier for parents to balance work and family, and to break down barriers that keep so many people on the sidelines of the economy, especially women. Don't you think we've waited long enough? It's time for equal pay for equal work. And don't you think it's time to face head-on the reality of systemic racism and invest in communities that have been left out and left behind? That means reforming our criminal justice system, our immigration systems, ensuring that people with disabilities have the same opportunities to work and fully participate in our society. It means to make sure that nothing holds you back, not debt, not discrimination, not a deck stack for those at the top. Now, no one can get this done alone, not even the President of the United States. It's got to be the mission of our entire nation. I have never believed in dividing America between us and them. We are all in this together. We all have to do our part. So let me say this to the men and women who run our country's corporations. If you cheat your employees, exploit consumers, pollute our environment, or rip off taxpayers, we're going to hold you accountable. But if you do the right things, if you invest in your workers, contribute to your communities, help build a better America, we're going to stand with you. We're going to go into the future together. We need more jobs. We need more opportunity. And I want to say this to all the young people out there. I know what you're up against. If you left college with a ton of loans, it's not enough just to make college more affordable. You need help right now with the debt you already have. That's why I have a plan to cut your interest rates and cap payments so you never have to pay more than you can afford. But I want you to think about this. It can't be just about what we're going to give to you. It has to be about what we're going to build together. Your generation is the most tolerant and connected our country has ever seen. In the days ahead, we will propose new ways for more Americans to get involved in national service and give back to our communities, because every one of us has a role to play in building the future we want. Washington is never going to have all the answers, but for every problem we face, somewhere, someone in America is solving it. And we need you to be part of that exciting journey we can make together. We need the community activist who decides to run for school board, the entrepreneur who stays and builds instead of leaving a hometown that has seen better days. We need the millions of teachers and nurses, police officers and firefighters who get up every day and do quiet, heroic work to make our country a safer, fairer, better place. It's going to take each of us working together, growing together, looking out for one another and lifting each other up. Because there is a basic truth about America. It's something that Bill and I have been the beneficiaries of, that we have tried to contribute to and do all we could to continue. America can only live up to its potential when each and every American has the chance to live up to your potential too. So imagine a tomorrow where no child grows up in the shadow of discrimination or under the specter of deportation. And every child in every zip code gets the education he or she needs and deserves. Imagine a tomorrow where every parent can find a good job and every grandparent can enjoy a secure retirement. Where small businesses thrive and big businesses play by the rules and give more back to the country that has given them so much. Where hard work is honored, families are supported, and communities are strong. With your help, that is the tomorrow we will build for our country. So please join us. Go to HillaryClinton.com, become a part of this campaign, or text JOIN 47246 right now. Let's do this together. Now I am heading on. I am on my way to Texas. I'm on my way to Texas. Bill is on his way to Colorado. The fight goes on. The future that we want is within our grasp. Thank you all. God bless you.
Hillary Clinton from the ballroom at Caesar's Palace, joined by her husband, the former president. Really the first pure victory speech she has been able to give in this still young campaign. Yet it became quite a recitation there at the end. She has worked Flint, Michigan into the speech where it hasn't been in the past. She has worked college education cost into the speech where it hasn't been in the past, perhaps in reaction to Senator Sanders, who we expect to hear next. She was out ahead and out first tonight. People watching closely saw still suppressing that cough. She's had a cold for a long time, which has become its own cause on many websites, especially this past week. John Ralston is standing by to talk to us, perhaps the best-known veteran political journalist in the state of Nevada. And, John, I was watching you all afternoon into the evening with Chris. You're reporting on Harry Reid. You're reporting on the casino caucus locations, the critical Saturday afternoon day shift. The men and women who make Las Vegas go came out to fuel her victory in the county that makes Nevada go politically.
Yeah, it's really true, Brian. And Amy Chozick of the New York Times first reported this phone call that Harry Reid made to the union leader, Dee Taylor. And I don't think you can underestimate how much difference that made. Before that phone call was made, the culinary union was going to do nothing to organize workers for those caucuses and those 6 sites. They may have just gotten 100 people to show up at all 6 sites combined. Now it looks like it's hundreds of people at each site. She crushed Bernie Sanders in those sites. I don't think it was an accident. I think the culinary was always leaning toward Hillary Clinton. I think Harry Reid was very worried about Hillary Clinton losing the Nevada caucus, one that he thought that she had wrapped up. He hasn't endorsed anybody, of course, but it's generally presumed among people who know that Harry Reid was worried about Bernie Sanders turning the momentum of the race toward himself and not toward Hillary Clinton, whom he and I think others in the Democratic establishment think is a much stronger candidate. Harry Reid asserted again today that he is the state Democratic Party, that he really can change the dynamic of an election in this state.
John Ralston, it's Rachel Maddow. It's great to see you on the big day. I'm so excited that you get to sleep sometime after tomorrow, after a week straight on television. Yeah. John, let me ask you about something we talked about heading into this caucus, which is the prospect of shenanigans. There's this weird loophole in the registration deadlines in Nevada this year, which made it theoretically possible for, I guess, excitable or excited Republican activists to be registered as Republicans, but nevertheless show up and caucus in the Democratic caucus tonight, and then still be able to caucus with the Republican Party on Tuesday. Nobody knows exactly what kind of effect that would have if it happened. Is there any sign that it did happen?
I think it happened in scattered ways from what I could figure out, Rachel. But, I mean, it's a very difficult thing for somebody to do. There was a lot of press attention to this after it became clear what they could do. And I think to the point where it was even being condemned by state and county Republican parties. I think it made people nervous. I never thought it was going to be much more than a few hundred people. I doubt it was even that much. By the way, we do have an estimated turnout now in Nevada. It was about 80,000 or so, my state Democratic Party sources tell me. It was, if you recall, it was about 120,000 in 2008. That number really would have had to go north of 90,000 is what people told me for Bernie Sanders to have a really good chance to beat Hillary Clinton. But this was always the Hillary Clinton machine versus the enthusiasm that clearly was building here, especially after New Hampshire. And Bernie Sanders kind of ragtag, but lots of energy here, organization. And the machine won and Harry Reid won.
John Ralston, who was out ahead of this story all afternoon into the evening, as we said, thank you so much. Eugene Robinson has joined us here. Nicole Wallace remains here. We're going to fit in a break. Remember, in 28 minutes, the polls close in South Carolina, where we have, by all indications, what did Chuck Todd call it? Fun night ahead.
He said a fun night, brother. Yeah. Which means it's going to be really fun.
We are back, and that is Henderson, Nevada. That is the Bernie Sanders event. Unlike the Hillary Clinton event, which was in a hotel ballroom, this is an outdoor amphitheater. They were hoping for word of what did not come. In fact, they have been defeated today by the Clinton campaign, but we will hear from Senator Sanders coming up. Also, South Carolina, we are 24 minutes away from poll closings there. An eventful night ahead.
Yeah, there's going to be, I mean, getting a doubleheader at any point is always good in sports. It's triple good in politics, particularly when you can speak with the chair, the national chair of one of our two parties. Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz is the Democratic National Committee chair, joins us from Miami. Congresswoman, thanks very much for being with us. It's really nice to have you here tonight.
My pleasure, Rachel. Great to be with you.
Let me ask you about not the result between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton in Nevada, but let me ask you about the turnout. This is only the second time the Democratic Party has managed a contested caucus in Nevada as an early state caucus. It looks like the numbers suggest that the voter turnout is down maybe as much as 50% from 2008. The Democratic turnout estimate right now we're hearing as 80,000 people turned out in Nevada. Are you worried that turnout numbers are down so much in each of the first 3 states for Democratic voters?
No, we had a different sort of election, and I think you have to judge each election based on, the dynamics that occur in that election. I mean, 80,000 is a really good turnout. It's something that the Nevada Party really emphasized. We had electronic tools that we used this time. 31,000 people were able to pre-register going into the caucuses. We had an online tool that helped people find their caucus site so that they could more easily get there. And just generally, I think we tried to make what is a process that teams with democracy a little bit easier for folks to be able to make sure that they could participate.
Madam Chair, I'm going to have to interrupt you there because we're going to go to Senator Sanders' speech tonight in Henderson, Nevada. We'll be back with you. Bernie Sanders tonight did not win in the Nevada caucuses. NBC News projects that the winner is Hillary Clinton. Secretary Clinton has already given her victory speech. Here's Senator Sanders in Henderson.
Today. 5 weeks ago, we were 25 points behind in the polls. And we have made some real progress. A little while ago, I called up Secretary Clinton and congratulated her and her staff for their victory here in Nevada. They ran a very aggressive, effective campaign, and I applaud them for their efforts. What this entire campaign has been about is the issue of momentum, is the issue of bringing more and more people into the political process. When we began in Iowa, we were 50 points behind. When we began in New Hampshire, we were 30 points behind, and we were way behind here in Nevada. But what I think is happening is that as people hear our message, and it's a tough message because it speaks to the truth of an American society today that a lot of people just don't want to address. And that is the fact that we have a corrupt campaign finance system which is undermining American democracy and must be changed. We will not allow billionaires and their super PACs to continue to buy elections in the United States of America. And the American people are catching on that we have a rigged economy. Ordinary people working 2 or 3 jobs, longer and longer hours, and almost all new income going to the top 1%. And together we are going to create an economy that works for all of us and not just the top 1%. And the American people are catching on that we have a broken criminal justice system. A system which says today that some kid in Nevada or Vermont gets picked up with some marijuana, that kid will have a police record staying with him his entire life. But if you are a Wall Street executive and your illegal behavior destroys the economy and the lives of millions of people, somehow nothing happens to you. And our job is to bring justice back to the criminal justice system. I want to thank all of our supporters here in Nevada. I want to thank our thousands of volunteers, including many of you, for working tirelessly. I want to thank our staff for the great job that they have done. I am especially proud that here in Nevada, and we're seeing this all over this country, we are bringing working people and young people into the political process in a way we have not seen for a very long time. In a short while, I'll be on a plane to South Carolina, and then we're going to be competing in 11 states all across this country on Super Tuesday. And I believe that on Super Tuesday, we have got an excellent chance to win many of those states. But I also know that on Super Tuesday and before, we are going to be taking on a very powerful and well-funded super PAC, a super PAC that receives significant amounts of money from Wall Street and wealthy special interests. So as we head to Super Tuesday, we would very much appreciate the support of the American people who have been so kind and generous. We have received at this point over 3.7 million individual contributions. And if people want to help us out, they can do that at BernieSanders.com. Lastly, as I think everyone knows, taking on the establishment, whether it is the financial establishment, whether it is the political establishment, whether it is the media establishment, is not easy. We have come a very long way in 9 months. It is clear to me, and I think most observers, that the wind is on at our backs. We have the momentum. And I believe that when Democrats assemble in Philadelphia in July at that convention, we are going to see the results of one of the great political upsets in the history of the United States. So, Nevada, our volunteers, our supporters, our staff, thank you all very much. And now it's on to Super Tuesday. Thank you.
Senator Bernie Sanders giving his concession speech tonight in Nevada, in Henderson, Nevada, being embraced there by some of his volunteers and supporters. The senator saying, "We have the momentum," and predicting one of the great political upsets in the history of the United States. Both Senator Sanders and Secretary Clinton tonight talking about going on not just to South Carolina, but onto the Super Tuesday states on March 1st, where so much of the race will be decided, if only because such a high proportion of the overall delegates needed to win the nomination will be allocated on that one night, on March 1st. Still with us now is the national chair of the Democratic Party, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Obviously, Congresswoman, nobody is expecting this race to end anytime soon. You got two candidates. The races so far have all been very close. The thing that's different, though, between the democratic process process and the Republican process is this issue of superdelegates. And so we have had some hard to explain results that are hard to explain to people who don't care that much about politics without it seeming drastically unfair. For example, the fact that Bernie Sanders won by 22 points in New Hampshire, but the delegate count came out of that race basically even. Is there an internal dialogue, internal discussion in the Democratic Party about the superdelegate process and whether or not the party's going to stick with it?
The superdelegates, and it's just, I'm glad you're asking me about this, because the way the media has been reporting this is incorrect. There aren't pledged delegates, i.e. superdelegates, earned at any of these primary or caucus contests, Rachel. Those unpledged delegates are elected officials, party leaders, people who have spent years and years in the Democratic Party, members of Congress, our DNC members are superdelegates, and they have the ability to decide who they choose to support at the convention at any point. So they are not actually, whatever they're saying now, I mean, most of them presumably would remain committed to who they've committed to now, but they haven't all committed to a candidate. And they're really free to decide all the way up into July. If you didn't have superdelegates, and keep in mind, we created superdelegates back in 1984. So this is not something that was suddenly developed, at this election cycle. But we do that so that we can make sure we maximize the ability of real people to participate in our convention. If you look at our convention, it looks like the rainbow that is America. If you look at the Republican convention, they put a little bit of the rainbow in the front row, and then the rest of their convention is not so diverse. So it's really important that we make sure we separate the types of delegates. Today in Nevada, in New Hampshire, in Iowa before it, the pledged delegates, which are 85% of the delegates that participate and cast a vote at the convention, those are what are earned in primaries and caucuses. And the rest of the 15% that are so-called superdelegates, they have up until July to decide who to support. So combining them at each phase of this contest is really not an accurate picture of the way this works.
So you would say that no superdelegate, even if they've said who they're going to support, we shouldn't take them at their word? We shouldn't consider them to... they're not just a symbolic role. They get to actually participate in the process of who gets picked as the nominee.
I mean, I'll just give you an example so I can speak, for myself. I am obviously not, not supporting either one of the candidates, but I'm a member of Congress, which makes me a superdelegate, and I'm also the DNC chair, which would make me a superdelegate. I get one vote at the convention, but if I were pledged to a candidate, as a superdelegate, I can pledge now, I can pledge in a month, I can wait all the way until the convention and decide. And there were, if you remember in 2008, there were superdelegates through the primary as the candidates winnowed down to then Senator Clinton and then Senator Obama, who did change their minds. So I really think it's important for the media, at least in our case, and the Republicans do have superdelegates as well, but they don't calculate them in the same way. It's really important to report these in a completely different way and not add them mathematically as each contest unfolds because of the way that our unpledged delegates can make their decision at any point.
DNC Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz, thank you very much. You know that is what Democrats fight about at cocktail parties with each other right now. Thank you for giving
and it happened in 2008, and it'll happen again.
Oh, yes, it is right now. Trust me. Thank you, ma'am. Really appreciate having you here.
Thank you.
It is part of, there's something different about the way Democrats and Republicans do this. I don't know how sustainable it is for Democrats to keep using the superdelegate process. It makes people, whoever they support, it makes people so mad that there might be these sort of VIP votes that are decided some way other than the primary or caucus process. I get that. That's the best explanation I've heard of why the Democratic Party has it. But boy, does that make your run-of-the-mill Democrat mad at the process.
Luckily, we get to change the topic to Republicans in short order. We're just inside 9 minutes until polls close in South Carolina, and at the top of the hour, we will characterize the race in some fashion. We'll learn what the NBC News characterization is along with you. A quick break. We'll be right back. 5 minutes now till poll closings in South Carolina, and we will all find out together what our NBC News characterization is at the top of the hour. What's going to be interesting tonight is finding out what the polling was like versus actual in this new state, in this new territory, as the race moves to the South, and late deciders, because so much happened in these past few days.
And what are the dynamics in what is still a 6-person race on the Republican side? Are people starting to make strategic decisions now, voting not necessarily for their first choice, but somebody who they see as their most viable choice? We'll also be looking again at turnout. The Republicans have been enjoying record turnout for them, for that party in Iowa, record turnout for them in New Hampshire. They have been bragging into the evening tonight about how good the signs look for South Carolina turnout. That's got to be good for Republicans in the fall, let alone who wins tonight.
We have talked about the age gap, the gender gap within the Democratic numbers. There is a larger excitement gap, however. To Rachel's point, it has decidedly been with the GOP contest in this still young election season. So just to recap, a final break here. When we come back at the top of the hour, we will find out how our election unit decides to characterize this race at the top of the hour, when we can make a characterization when the polls are closed in South Carolina. Please stay with us.
Very exciting time.
We are back about 20 seconds till the top of the hour, 20 seconds until the signal goes out, closing the polls in South Carolina, where folks have been told if you're in line by 7 o'clock Eastern, you will get to vote. Let's talk about what we do know, and that is our call earlier tonight, the Nevada race for Hillary Clinton. We've heard her victory speech and Sanders' concession. It is now 7 p.m. in South Carolina. We can report the following language from the NBC News election unit. This race is too close to call. The top three, Trump, Cruz, and Rubio. The other candidates are well behind. So, too close to call at poll closing, 7 o'clock Eastern time. It is a three-way race between Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio. The remaining field well behind. To Chris Matthews we go in Las Vegas, Nevada. Chris, we got an interesting night still to play out here.
You sure do. And I was thinking of that old Dinah Washington song, what a difference a day made. And what a difference today did make here already in Nevada, and will make more as we get to midnight out there on the East Coast. It seems to me that if you're Michael Bloomberg right now, who's been talked about a lot as a possible third-party candidate, I think he's lost a big part of his rationale today. If Hillary Clinton can win it tonight, it looks like she's won, according to us, she has won. If she can win next week, a week from now on that Saturday, and she's expected to win big then, she's going into Super Tuesday with the wind at her back. Almost all those events on Super Tuesday, 9 of the 11 are actually going to be actual primaries, not caucuses. That means regular people show up. It's much less difficult to vote. She should do very well. So she looks like she's moving in the right direction. Not won it yet, certainly, still being contested by Bernie, but looks like she could well win the nomination. That removes one of the real strong rationales for Bloomberg to run. Another thing I noticed tonight is that if this thing gets close, and actually Rubio looks like he is really in contention, that removes another obstacle, another reason, rather rationale for Bloomberg to enter this race, and scares the Democrats. If you talk to Democrats who really follow this political business, they're afraid of Rubio. He's young, he's attractive, he's an incredible good speaker. He's the right age person to run for president. He's not old. He's not nuts in any way. Doesn't come across as an ideologue. He's a hawk, which is good for the country. If you're going to vote Republican, you're probably a hawk. And so it looks to me like if that race begins to settle, Hillary versus Rubio, that's a tough one. That's a real close race as I see it. And no rationale for Bernie Sanders, or for Bloomberg. Now, Hillary's speech tonight, I thought was very interesting. She's much more aiming towards unity. Her message was unity. We can get this done if we all work together, if we include everybody. Very much challenging the polarization and the language of Bernie, which is basically a class struggle. It's us against the billionaires. She challenges that. She's not offering that as her patois, her whole way of talking about this thing. And then Bernie came on and basically gave his speech. No change. the line about criminal justice, the line about inequality, the 1%, everything about the system being rigged, Bernie, Bernie, Bernie. So I was surprised he didn't offer really anything new tonight, except he's on to Super Tuesday. He made a point of saying not on to South Carolina. So I think that both candidates are behaving rationally. Hillary thinking now to Super Tuesday in the general. Bernie's still wondering where he goes next with his speech. It's the same speech. I think that Michael Bloomberg's having some real thoughts tonight about whether there's a role for him, guys.
Interesting, your comments about Bloomberg. A lot of people still want to hear the electability case for him. And to your point about the Democrats and Rubio, I think they were more fearful until the debate moment, which showed them markers of his communications vulnerability. But, Chris, we'll keep coming out to you tonight. You had the first results of the evening. Rachel and I welcome Gene Robinson and Nicole Wallace. And, Nicole, as we round the turn into having real results, I don't know why we're all staring at it. It's a lot of fun. As we round the turn into having results out of South Carolina, fourth place is not fatal, but fifth may be.
Fifth isn't so good. Fourth isn't so good. I think that after tonight, we'll be talking about a three-person race, and each lane will be represented. I think we will, at the end of the night, have an outsider horse. I think we will have a very conservative horse, and I think we'll have an establishment horse. And I think what we're already reporting probably gives you a pretty good sense of who that is. The Rubio campaign is feeling great about the early signs. They feel that they're outperforming everything, and they think that by the end of the night, they'll have a great story to tell about electability, what you just alluded to. And I want to talk about that debate moment, because that campaigns are never judged by their stumbles. They're judged by how they sort of recoup afterward. George W. Bush lost New Hampshire by 19 points. He went on to win because he didn't fire anybody. He didn't overreact. He didn't freak out. He just got better. Marco Rubio had an abysmal debate performance the Saturday before.
Unbelievable.
And to the degree that it revealed that his knowledge was thin, it would have been fatal. But I think it revealed that his tactics were wrong, that being robotic in an election cycle dominated by the most unscripted political figure in American history, being robotic is not the way to go. He has made the appropriate adjustments, and I think if he finishes strong tonight, that tells a good story about the campaign's viability and ability to react to their setbacks.
Well, Gene, I mean, if you look at the history of South Carolina in terms of the Republican race, the winner of the South Carolina Republican primary has gone on to win the Republican nomination every single time except once.
Except the last
Except
time.
for Newt Gingrich,
Except the last time,
But the other piece of history here, I mean, we've got a three-way tie right now. It's too close to call, according to NBC, between Trump, Cruz, and Rubio. The other piece of history here that drags itself into this is that there has never been a case where a Republican won the nomination without placing first or second in South Carolina, right? It's never happened, and nobody's won without winning New Hampshire, Iowa, or South Carolina. Without winning anything.
But the way we have characterized the race is that we've got a three-way race at the top and everyone else quite far behind. So, you know, depending on, I mean, that sounds like a pretty big gap. So fourth, fifth, sixth could all be roughly, you know, the same place, which is out in left field.
But presumably that has no effect on John Kasich's campaign. He set expectations that he wanted to do better than squat. I register squat as approximately, I don't know, 11 votes, maybe?
You're on your own.
I mean, it does nothing to John Kasich. He sends $0 in South Carolina. Ben Carson, who knows where he's at right now. The question is whether or not Jeb Bush drops out. And if he does, who does that help?
Well, it helps Marco Rubio.
It does?
It does.
Despite the Bush machine having thrown grenade after grenade after grenade into Rubio's camp this entire campaign?
Look, to the extent that Jeb Bush's support is establishment support, Rubio is, Nicole, it's right, Rubio is the candidate of the establishment lane coming out of South Carolina. It looks like that's the way it's going to be. And Ted Cruz is the candidate of the very conservative lane. It'll be interesting to see what evangelicals do. If Ben Carson does not do well in South Carolina, where do his supporters go? They go potentially to Ted Cruz?
Trump do with that group? I mean,
well, exactly, so because a lot of evangelicals go for Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is his own lane. I mean, it's we're calling it the outsider lane, but it's really the Trump lane, right? But it's an important, it's a new thing. But
and it's gold and beautiful and huge.
It's huge.
Right.
Yes.
But it's real, right? So this sets up the kind of contest that we haven't ever seen,
No.
really.
No.
And it could go on for a while.
Well, let's put some meat on those bones, though, because in terms of talking about who's winning what and how this race is shaping up, Steve Kornacki has this second wave, the new wave of exit poll data out of South Carolina. Who's doing well with who?
Yeah, and that's an interesting discussion you're starting to have there. And this has been a surprise all along. We talk about the evangelical vote. We got a lot of numbers we can show you. First of all, look at this. This is the percentage of the electorate in all the early states and how many have identified themselves as white evangelical or born-again Christian. It was big in Iowa. It was small in New Hampshire. It is the biggest we've seen, nearly 70% in South Carolina tonight. Now, how are those voters casting their ballots? Donald Trump right now is
evangelicals.
leading with evangelicals. This is the group that Ted Cruz, more than any other group, has based his campaign on. This was his strategy in Iowa. The idea was to win there, then to come down to South Carolina and win with these voters in South Carolina. Right now, again, these numbers could change. This is the second wave of exit poll data, but Donald Trump leading with white evangelicals. We can also look at it this way. There's a college, non-college divide here. It roughly splits the electorate in half. Those with college degrees, Marco Rubio is winning among them. Trump and Cruz right behind him. Those without college degrees, Trump is winning big. Rubio falls back far there. And there is also this ideology. This is the breakdown. This is how people are describing themselves tonight. Again, 82% saying they're either very or some... There we go. 82% saying very or somewhat conservative. And look at this. You can see among very conservative, Ted Cruz is doing what he needs to do. Nearly 40% of the vote. Marco Rubio, not much there. Watch what happens, though. Ted Cruz, it's supposed to happen. All right, it's not moving. Okay. This is what happens on election night. But that Ted Cruz number drops and drops. You get down to moderates, he's in single digits. So Ted Cruz's support is just concentrated there. Donald Trump, meanwhile, he's in the high 20s, low 30s, every group.
So on those Cruz numbers, just to reiterate there, you're saying that Cruz is basically locking up very, very conservative, right? Everybody voting in the South Carolina Republican Party is to some degree a conservative. People who are identifying themselves as very conservative, he's getting them, but he's not getting anybody else anywhere else on the Republican ideological spectrum.
That's right. And Donald Trump, meanwhile, is doing very well with moderates. He's beating Marco Rubio there, and somewhat conservative, and well enough with very conservative to be in the game.
So again, the Trump split is not an ideological split. With Cruz, he's getting a targeted ideological audience. With Trump, he's appealing to a wide range of Republicans.
Right, it's across the board.
See, and that's how you put together a win.
Steve Kornacki at the board tonight. Steve, once again tonight, sponsored by the Steve Kornacki Casual Collection.
Steve, did you get in trouble for the jeans now that we've got khakis?
Yeah, now I got my fancy khakis on, and I'll have you know this is a new sweater.
I think you look very nice. You look like a young Republican.
Oh, there you go. Right.
Don't be creepy.
South Carolina.
He's not that young.
Republicans are
Jeez, Nicole.
Thankfully,
it's been a long night.
Thankfully, Katie Tur is standing by at Trump headquarters in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Katie, what are you hearing from headquarters?
Well, Donald Trump has been hunkered down all day today. No public appearances. They're trying to eke out a win here, Brian, which is so surprising considering that just a couple weeks ago he was up by double digits here. Part of the reason that we've seen a decline in his numbers this past week is being attributed to his debate performance on Saturday, where he accused George W. Bush of lying about weapons of mass destruction. George W. Bush is still a very popular figure here, and that did not go over well. Sources within the campaign told me that they warned him to back off of that. Even phone bank volunteers who were working the phones, who were hearing pushback from voters, told Donald Trump to ease up on that line of attack. We did hear him ease up on it throughout the week, but was it enough? Donald Trump, though, has drawn massive crowds in this state, thousands strong most of the time. It's where he introduced his Muslim ban. It's where he talks about waterboarding a lot, how it's not tough enough. He even spoke last night about a internet hoax story about General Pershing in the Philippines, dipping bullets in blood in order to kill terrorists. He was trying to make the point that America just isn't tough any longer, and he's trying to tell voters that he's the one that's going to be able to make this country tough again. We will see if they agree with him or if they want him in elected office here in South Carolina at the very least. And it's a big deal if he wins here. If he wins here, he has the momentum to go on to the SEC states and really kneecap Ted Cruz, which would be his main competition down there. We've also seen him draw massive crowds down there. He got 20,000 1,000 in Mobile, Alabama. One other point as to what Steve Kornacki was just mentioning about where he's doing well. We also saw him doing well with moderates in Iowa, certainly doing very well with moderates in New Hampshire. So no surprise that he's cutting across large swaths of this party and drawing their support there. But is it going to be enough to overcome Ted Cruz's staunch evangelical vote? We're going to see in just a few hours.
All right, Katie Tur with a buoyant Trump crowd there in Spartanburg. Let's check in with the Cruz campaign. Hallie Jackson is in Columbia. Hallie?
Hey there, Brian. Tonight, the Cruz campaign has been downplaying expectations of an upset victory, but Cruz should absolutely finish strong here. You're seeing it in some of the numbers that are coming out already. At this point, it looks as though Cruz will finish in the top tier, and there's a sense in the campaign that that is enough, given that they've already notched a win in an early state over in Iowa. Cruz has to prove tonight that he can contend in the South, Brian. That is key to his strategy moving forward into those SEC primary states, states like Tennessee, Texas, Oklahoma, where he's been organizing and putting boots on the ground for months now. They have thousands of volunteers out there. You talk about turnout in South Carolina, too. The chairman of the state Republican Party is telling me tonight that many precincts broke turnout records from 2012 by 2 this afternoon. The prediction is that some 650,000 voters will have cast ballots in the Republican primary by the time this is all said and done. So how does this affect the Cruz campaign? An aide told me a couple of minutes ago that they're looking to what happened in the past in Iowa, where there were also turnout records broken, and where Cruz, of course, came out in that top spot. Brian?
All right, Hallie Jackson at the Cruz campaign headquarters in Columbia. Hallie, thanks. To repeat for viewers just joining us, our characterization at the 7 o'clock hour with the closing of polls in South Carolina. It is too close to call. It is also a three-way race at the top. Trump, Cruz, Rubio. The other candidates, as we are saying, are well behind the top three. And to round out the top three, Gabe Gutierrez covering the Rubio campaign effort also in Columbia.
Hey there, Brian. The Rubio campaign says they are very excited. They have been trying to bounce back from that devastating 5th place finish in New Hampshire. Now they're hoping for a strong finish here. One campaign aide telling me that to finish in the top tier here would be a huge comeback. Now, the Rubio campaign secured several major endorsements in this state, including Senator Tim Scott and perhaps most importantly, Governor Nikki Haley. Together, they had campaigned throughout the state over the last few days as the new faces of conservatism. Now, the Rubio campaign hopes that as more Republican candidates drop out, that the GOP will coalesce around one candidate. They hope it's Marco Rubio to take on Donald Trump. Now, the big question right now is where Rubio will finish in relation to Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. But again, Brian, after that devastating finish in New Hampshire, the Rubio campaign hopes that South Carolina will be a turning point.
Gabe Gutierrez covering the Rubio campaign. That's where we stand at this hour, 15 after 7 o'clock in the East. Take another break. Our coverage will continue on the other side. Polls in South Carolina have been closed for about 19 minutes, and we still remain at too close to call. Three-way race, Trump, Cruz, Rubio, other candidates well behind. Exit polling, sometimes extremely useful, sometimes not. A case of the former tonight in one of the subgroupings.
That's exactly right. The race takes an interesting turn for each of the parties at this point in the primary process. When the Democrats head to Nevada, they get their first really racially diverse electorate. When the Republicans head to South Carolina, they get their state with a huge veterans population. Something like 35%. I think actually that is the number. 35% of the Republican electorate turning out today in South Carolina are people who have served in the U.S. military. The exit poll data in terms of the way veterans broke down in South Carolina is kind of mind-bending. Look at these numbers. Among South Carolina Republicans who have served in the military, again, more than a third of today's electorate, they are going 35% for Donald Trump in our exit poll data, 25% for Marco Rubio, 23% for Ted Cruz, and Jeb Bush way back there at 7%. Nicole Wallace, that is a shocking number to you.
You guys saw me jump out of my chair when I read this number when we first saw this. This is in part because the veteran population of South Carolina is age diverse. You know, they are veterans of all of our wars. And I watched the debate last Saturday night on a JetBlue flight and was literally screaming and hooping and hollering. I said, this is it. Trump, you just cannot.
What about the debate?
Echo Rosie O'Donnell and Michael Moore on 9/11 and win a Republican primary.
So when he said the World Trade Center came down when your brother was president.
What he said specifically was that Bush lied about WMD. He had before said that the Iraq War was a mistake. That wasn't the whopper for me, but saying that Bush lied about 9/11 and that he was to blame for 9/11, I thought would damage him with this group. I thought that would maybe give Jeb Bush an opening. I thought it would give Marco Rubio, who has really touted his military record. He has a stronger voting record on these matters. That's the case he's making than Cruz. The fact that he dominated that group really says a lot.
I have a theory. I mean, my theory on that is that more than a decade of war has taken a real toll on military families. It really has, and a lot of South Carolinians feel that, and so it's possible to have admiration for George W. Bush, to even have thought it was a good idea to invade Afghanistan, a good idea to invade Iraq, but still to have had it, basically, and to respond to Donald Trump playing on that issue.
And it was interesting to see the Jeb Bush campaign after that same debate that you watched on that flight. The Jeb Bush campaign was so buoyant. They thought they did both well on their own terms, and they thought they had vanquished Donald Trump. They thought that Trump had stepped in it with that he would never escape that, particularly in South Carolina. They also thought that Jeb Bush just nailed him coming out of that and had the perfect response, and especially in a week when he was campaigning with his brother and everything, and it's true in Jeb world, but not in the rest of the world.
12 recipients of the Medal of Honor.
All the generals.
Countless generals, admirals.
But who would have thought that a candidate in the Republican race could have a week where he goes mano a mano with the Pope, where he basically goes Rosie-O on 9/11 and wins? I mean, you know,
he's not saying that it was 9/11 was an inside job.
In the debate,
he did not.
Said, well, let me defend Rosie-O for a second. She's just had different
your old
views.
friend.
Yeah, my old colleague. But the words, when we think of someone blaming 9/11 on Bush, we do not think of a Republican Party standard bearer. We think of the far left fringe of the Democratic Party. And
but the specific claim on WMDs, I think, is not right now a far left Democratic.
Not super fringy, but I'm saying the blaming of 9/11 on Bush, which was the words in the debate, really.
He did.
And he didn't walk them back, but he didn't repeat them. Yeah. So it's fascinating.
Well, it will be interesting to see. I think Jean is right to point out that there may be a generational change among veterans as well. I mean, Iraq and Afghanistan veterans may have a different view on this than an older generation of veterans. I would love for groups to poll the veterans community specifically enough so we can talk about
all
this
year. I mean, it's going to be really interesting.
But in South Carolina, it was always, you could always say that South Carolina was going to pick the establishment pick, South Carolina was going to pick the nominee, and South Carolina veterans would pick a pro-military, mainstream Republican hawk candidate. None of those seem to be true tonight, but we'll see.
South Carolina is changing. There are counties in South Carolina where, over a 10-year period, population has increased 30, 40%. A lot of northern transplants coming down. They're coming from, diverse places in the country. But you can't count on the Republican electorate in my native state being what it used to be.
Fun fact, I also watched the debate on a JetBlue flight, but ours was 6 hours delayed.
Oh, God. Thank God for those. Why can't everybody put satellite TV on their plane?
I know it. It makes a flight go like that once you get in the air. Chuck Todd standing by to talk to us. Chuck, piggyback on this conversation about South Carolina. Changes in the state, this neck-snapping exit poll information about the military vote.
Well, no, there is, but it's also one thing you got to remember about why this South Carolina primary has been so predictive, by the way, for Republican nominees going forward, is that the overall Republican electorate in South Carolina, it is the one that most closely matches the national Republican electorate, sort of the split between people who identify themselves as very conservative voters versus somewhat conservative versus moderate. And so the one thing that is different in South Carolina than the rest is that high veteran population than in other Republican electorates. But beyond that, what makes it such a perfect snapshot in time, usually, as a presidential primary predictor, is because of its ideological makeup is so closely mirrors what the national Republican makeup here. And this, to me, is where you're seeing how this race is going to play out now over the next couple of months. Ted Cruz is the candidate of very conservative voters. That hasn't changed. It didn't change in Iowa, and it seems to be the case here in South Carolina. But Donald Trump is now the candidate of both moderate voters and somewhat conservative voters. Now, what does that mean? Marco Rubio is second in both categories. But that means if this is the three-way race we're about to see happen, if this is what the news of tonight is, less about who's 1, 2, and 3, and more about that it's just down to 3, then we have some weird fights that are going on. Trump and Rubio are going to be fighting for the same territory. Those two are to be the setup. And Cruz is the guy that probably has the most solid base of everybody because he's got this devoted, very conservative, evangelical following. But he's got to figure out how to build. The other two, Rubio and Trump, are going to be fighting for the more moderate or mainstream voters. And we're going to have a wild race. That's what I meant when I was talking to you earlier about this is going to be a wild night. I think a wild night that's going to set up a wild 4 months.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. And to our viewers, by the way, while Chuck was talking, the numbers both on the side of the screen and at the bottom of the screen, just keep in mind 1% has come in. So, yes, there is a finishing order, a running order. Yes, there are percentages assigned to this. All of 1% is in. Chuck, don't go far. I want to bring in an actual South Carolinian, an old friend of ours, John Huey. That is not to say he is old. It's just to say we've known him for a good long time. John is a former East Coast media type who was editor-in-chief at Time Inc., then saw the light, went back down to South Carolina. John, one thing we don't talk about is what it's like to live in one of these primary states. How would you sum up the South Carolina of 2016 and this race you have just lived through?
Well, hi, Brian, and hi, Gene, an authentic South Carolinian. It's great. I'm not on a JetBlue flight, first of all, and it's great to be away from home right now, to get away from the robocalls, which have been vicious and constant for the last 3 days. Nothing extraordinary.
Hey, John, let me cut you off. As soon as I asked you, I have to cut you off. We have a projection. Donald J. Trump is the projected winner of the South Carolina primary. Again, a comparatively low percentage of the raw vote in, but NBC News is projecting that when all of the votes are counted, Donald Trump will win the South Carolina primary. The rest of the race, we've been saying, too close to call, though we've been characterizing it as a three-way race with Rubio and Cruz, Rubio all evening. So there you have it, the check mark next to Trump. We have a new ball game.
There's two interesting things here, right? So now we are looking at a tight race for second place.
That's right.
We don't exactly know what second place will mean in South Carolina, but that's what they're fighting for. Obviously, at the bottom tier, Jeb Bush, John Kasich, and Ben Carson fighting for survival, most particularly Jeb Bush. But there's one concrete consequence of this call for Donald Trump tonight, and that's in delegates. The way that the South Carolina delegates work, there's 50 overall. You get 29 of those 50 just for winning. After that, the rest of them get allocated according to who wins the various 7 congressional districts in the state. But Donald Trump just won a big chunk of delegates, following, of course, the big chunk that he won in New Hampshire as well. So in terms of the actual race toward the nomination, this gives Donald Trump a big leap forward.
With apologies to our real-life South Carolinian who was just talking. John, let's go back to you. You get to, because you were so patient, you get to be our first reaction as part-time East Coast media type. What do you think?
I'm shocked. No, I'm not. I don't think anyone's surprised that Donald Trump won the South Carolina primary. A couple of things. You got to remember that the Republican primary in South Carolina is a pretty white event. I mean, if you ride around and look at polling places, you don't see a lot of people of color. But if you look at these results now, if they were to hold, and Rubio were to really be number 2, here's Rubio, who is a Latino immigrant, son of Latino immigrants. You've got him endorsed by Nikki Haley, who is of Asian descent and our governor. And you've got Tim Scott, the only African-American Republican senator in the United States who was appointed by Nikki Haley. So you got a little rainbow thing going there. So you, in an all-white not all white, but a largely white primary. Now, next week, of course, we have the Democratic primary, and you can feel the sort of the air coming out of the balloon and the media looking for ways to leave. We only get to do this once every 4 years. With our 9 little electoral votes, you know, people don't come here unless there's tragedy or hurricane or disaster. But every 4 years, we're a big deal, and there's this wisdom, these laws about the South Carolina primary. Like the winner always is the Republican nominee. Last time out, it was Newt Gingrich. How'd that work out? So I don't know. I sort of feel like the circus is in town. Trump has won, which is not a surprise. But I do think if Rubio holds on to the number 2, there's a little bit of a story there. Also, in a state as conservative as South Carolina, I'm slightly surprised that Cruz isn't running stronger than he is. I'm not real impressed with what he looks like now. Of course, I know these are very early. So, you know, that's my initial reaction. But again, South Carolina is the last of the boutique primaries. It's the last of where they're on the streets tracking you down for your little. Now you guys go into the big time, and we see how these guys hold up.
John Huey, a recovering East Coast media type in South Carolina. John, it's awfully good to see you. Thank you very much for being part of our coverage tonight. Sorry to interrupt there briefly.
Good to see you. Thank you.
All right. Nicole, you were nodding about the point he just made about Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz is running the best operational campaign. He is running a traditional, strategic, targeted organization. He had that decisive, decisive. You know, Ken Mehlman, former RNC chairman, who really evolved the Democratic Party or the Republican Party in the same way that Obama's team, David Plouffe and David Axelrod, evolved their party for those wins. And Cruz has built on that. He has used technology to his advantage. He has an aggressive paid and earned media, and it all lines up with his message. But if he falls behind Trump and Rubio, I think there'll be real questions about whether he just becomes sort of this fringy candidate who only appeals to the extremely conservative.
Well, let me just talk one point of that. I mean, the way that you build a winning presidential campaign on social conservative and evangelical support is that you win all social conservative evangelical support. Everybody knows that you're never going to put together a working majority with just that community, but you must have that community and then start building on it from beyond that. Right now, when you look at the demographics of South Carolina, just in terms of the evangelical vote, it's Iowa. It's not New Hampshire. Ted Cruz did it in Iowa. He was able to win there. If that was going to be his way to win, he had to have won the entire evangelical vote, and that should have been enough for him to win this state.
But I think the states are really different. I mean, I think the evangelical communities in South Carolina, frankly, it's less of a community because, like, everybody's
So evangelical means different things in different states. That's a good point.
You know, we've talked a lot over the months about whether Donald Trump has a ceiling. I think one question that could come out tonight is whether Ted Cruz has a ceiling, and it's just the very, very conservative part of the Republican Party, and can he break out of that?
And that's something that good organizing can't get him past.
Exactly.
Right, and he's also had a terrible run of media. I mean, the attacks from his opponents between Iowa and South Carolina are about his character. They're about playing dirty tricks against Ben Carson on the night of the Iowa caucuses. They're about his morality, about being a liar. I mean, Trump could not have and the other guys piled on. I mean, we've talked about how he's not well liked by other Republicans. It has hurt him. It has cost him.
Well, so South Carolina famously is the land of dirty tricks, right? It's sort of this badge of honor, right? The land of Lee Atwater and the famous 2000 George W. Bush, John McCain robocalls. Here's the thing about dirty tricks in South Carolina in this primary. There weren't as many as there have been in previous years, but almost all of them that became known and discussed by the national media were attributed to Ted Cruz. Whether or not he actually did them, it was the robocalls that the Rubio campaign was complaining about. It was the Photoshop of Marco Rubio as if he were shaking hands with President Obama. I mean, everything that was described as a dirty trick thus far in the campaign was basically put on Cruz. Now, does that hurt Cruz? I don't know, but it certainly turns all the other candidates against him. And if there is going to have to be some sort of coalition effort to knock off Trump, nobody's going to want to coalesce around Ted Cruz, not if they think that he's the killer in the room.
I also think it was a record clean year because a record high number of people are watching. Everyone's been deputized to look for it. It's not as fun as it used to be in the Atwater era. My job here is to get us to a quick break. 7:35 p.m. East Coast. We already have a projected winner in South Carolina. It's the rest of the race that becomes so interesting as the hours roll on. Stay with us.
The check mark there is very significant. NBC News has projected that Donald Trump will win the Republican primary in South Carolina. Look at that battle for second place right now between Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. We'll be watching more of the vote come in. This is only 3% in right now to see how the rest of the field shapes up. And in terms of how this Donald Trump victory came together, Steve Kornacki has a look at the data that we've got so far. How do we think Trump did this?
Right, so we're looking at the map here, the counties that are shaded in right now. Trump is green. These are counties where he's leading. We don't have full results from anywhere. So we'll see how this changes as the night goes on. But something to look at right now is basically you can divide South Carolina into 3 regions roughly. That arrow went a little too high. But the coastal region, this is the most moderate on the Republican side, the most moderate, most liberal part of the state. To the extent that Mitt Romney did well in 2012, it was here. Then you look sort of the mid-state, the state capital, the suburbs around it. This was the area Marco Rubio was looking to do well tonight. If Marco Rubio is going to get second place, you're going to see it especially in this county here. Trump is leading, but this is suburban. This is sort of it's a Lexington County. It's sort of a bedroom community. So this is where Rubio's looking. But the key in South Carolina is always up here. It's the upstate. When we talk about the huge number of evangelical Christians, white evangelical Christians, you are really especially talking about this part of the state. Especially it gets very rural up here. You have Greenville County as a city. You have a very rural area up here. This is the area Ted Cruz has been counting on to carry him to victory in the state. But again, what you're seeing, the story that's emerging right now, you're seeing green up here. Yeah. You're seeing green in here, and you're seeing green down here. You're not seeing the other candidates coloring in counties in all 3 regions. You're only seeing Donald Trump do that. So in terms of that battle for second, you look for Rubio. He's got a score in here. You look for Cruz. He's got a score up here.
That's fascinating. Again, we were looking at Ted Cruz unable to consolidate and lock up the voters he needs the most as he's getting cut in there by both Rubio and Trump in some of those areas where he expected to do strongest. Right. Oh, fascinating.
Is Chuck Todd standing by for us? Okay. Katie Tur at Trump headquarters. Katie Tur.
You don't need Chuck. You got me.
There you go.
It's a joke.
What do you have to tell us, though?
Don't tell Chuck I said that. The huge cheers just erupted here at Trump headquarters as they heard that the race was called for him. Obviously, a very excited crowd. Exit polling showing that terror is the #1 issue for voters. Also, that a majority of voters here in South Carolina support Donald Trump's Muslim ban. Terror has been something that he has been hitting really hard on the trail throughout the states, but especially here in South Carolina, where he knows he's talking to a lot of veterans and a lot of those who serve in the military currently. So the Muslim ban was where, this is actually where he introduced the Muslim ban to resounding cheers. It's where he talks about waterboarding all the time and how it's not tough enough. It's where he talked about that General Pershing story, dipping the bullets in blood, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. Donald Trump has been banking on proving himself to be the toughest on terror, the hardest line when it comes to keeping this country safe, building a border wall, keeping the others out, the ones that could do us damage, the ones that could come out and hurt us. That is what he has staked his campaign on, and South Carolina voters clearly are liking it because they've come out and decided that he is the winner of this race here in South Carolina. It's certainly not as big of a win as the candidate or the campaign may have expected just a week ago. He was up by double digits here. It's still a very early call, but there was some indication that his attacks on George W. Bush hurt him here. George W. Bush is still a very popular person in this state. Jeb Bush brought him out a number of times, even brought out his mother, trying to curry favor with voters in order to bring him up. That didn't seem to work. It did seem to take Donald Trump down a notch, though. They didn't necessarily like that he was going after George W. Bush, claiming that he lied about WMDs to go into Iraq. He eased up on that in the last week. He also stopped swearing. We were hearing indications that the swearing was hurting him in this state. Nonetheless, regardless, he goes on with a big win in South Carolina. Guys, remember, this is a candidate that everybody took to be a joke in the early stages. This is a candidate that people thought would be in and out of this race within 6 weeks, then just a couple months. Even in December, as late as early December, people were saying that voters were going to get their heads on straight and they were not going to vote for Donald Trump. Well, he has just won South Carolina. He's won South Carolina. He has won New Hampshire, and he is going into the South with a lot of momentum behind him and a lot of fight left in him, especially when it comes to Ted Cruz, who is supposed to do well among the evangelicals in this state. Without doing well here, Donald Trump could potentially have a much easier path to the nomination. Guys.
Katie Tur, we can't say that enough. You're absolutely right. No one predicted the path of this campaign or Donald Trump's candidacy. Katie Tur at Trump headquarters will obviously cut there when Donald Trump appears. We want to get reaction tonight from a former Republican member of Congress. Oh, look at that. It's Joe Scarborough. Hey, Joe, what do you make of the results so far tonight for Donald Trump and the interesting part, which is the rest of the GOP race?
Well, I tell you that this is unbelievably significant for everybody. Jeb Bush is going to have to get in double digits. A lot of people right now think he may be in single digits. If so, he'd have to get out of the race. The talk all day today was that Marco Rubio was going to finish strong. The chamber, Rubio's camp, were expecting a very strong second-place finish, so we look at that. But I will tell you the Trump camp was increasingly pessimistic as they saw exit polls today showing that 3 out of 4 voters were evangelical voters, more evangelical voters in this South Carolina Republican primary than even in Iowa. And also, of course, very conservative voters accounted for nearly 1 out of 2 primary voters here in South Carolina. Gene Robinson is right. This is a different South Carolina, but it's actually the GOP primary this year even more conservative than it was 4 years ago when Newt Gingrich won. That a New York billionaire, thrice married, could do this well, given all of that, is pretty shocking. And I agreed with Nicole's assessment of last weekend's debate. I thought, as a traditional Republican, it was a disaster. I was just as sure as a lot of people that Donald Trump would stagger out of that debate and possibly finish in second place. When we saw some of the early exit polls today, it was looking that way. The fact that he's wrapping this up in South Carolina certainly has to concern everybody. And the big fight now for second place is especially significant for Marco Rubio, who had every important endorsement that he needed, including a really big endorsement from Nikki Haley. But again, Donald Trump winning this year, 4 years ago, Newt Gingrich winning. This is not your father's Republican Party in South Carolina. This is a party at war with itself. And in this case, it seems like the outsiders have taken over, at least for now.
Joe Scarborough in Charleston. Joe, thank you for that. And Nicole, let's go debate rules. If your name was mentioned in the previous answer, you get 60 seconds to respond.
You my time to Ben Carson.
I watched all the punditry after that debate. People described that debate in terms of a demolition derby, in terms of championship wrestling. People thought they had just witnessed a disaster, and certainly the self-immolation, now deemed impossible, of Donald Trump.
So everything I know about politics, I learned from talking to my smart parents, who are very rational voters in normal times. They vote Republican, but they're moderate Republicans. They're California Republicans. They picked me up Saturday night after my JetBlue flight in Reno, and they were totally demoralized about Donald Trump. They thought he had imploded. They were so upset.
They love Trump.
They love Trump. My mother changed her registration from independent to Republican to caucus for him next week. They were so demoralized. But by the time he was fighting with the Pope They were, you know, who does the Pope think he is to question Trump's religious, you know, his faith belief system? And I'm like, well, he's the Pope. But the Trump supporters see Trump as political chemo. He may be toxic. He may kill every healthy cell in the bloodstream, but he is the only cure for the cancer that is Washington established.
So the bigger the fight is that he gets in, the more it makes him stronger, whether he wins the fight or not, whether the fight is appropriate or not.
They have
he likes that he's in big fights.
They have accepted the toxic nature of his speech. They have accepted sort of the warts and the bumps. They have accepted all the things Joe Scarborough mentioned about his marriages, about being a billionaire, about, you know, he is arguably the guy who's held the most different positions on sort of those third rail issues for Republicans: abortion, eminent domain,
immigration.
I mean, you name it. Healthcare. He came out this week saying he didn't mind the mandate, but they stick by him because they think he is the cure for a toxic
But that's not the whole party, though, and it's just, since Joe mentioned my name too. So
you don't have to yield your time to it.
Here's the most obvious prediction: we're going to hear 3 victory speeches tonight on the Republican side, right? Obviously, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz for finishing what he will characterize as a strong second or third, and Marco Rubio.
Donald Trump field.
Marco Rubio the same, and we should listen to those speeches as sort of templates for what's to come, how they're going to try to expand beyond their narrow lanes. But we so have 3 lanes now, and Trump doesn't have the whole party. I mean, he's got the outside lane, but he doesn't have the whole party.
Moderator's privilege. We have to get to a break because on the other side, we expect to see Donald Trump live coming out to celebrate his victory tonight in South Carolina.
These are the people in this race.
That's 7%.
We are back. This is the projected winner tonight in the Republican primary in South Carolina. There's the first 3. It is the race for third. And now let's show the entire field. Cruz, Rubio, Jeb Bush, John Kasich, Ben Carson. Let's see all of their names on the same page, for example.
Come on, I'll give you $1.
Come on, we can do it. We've got it.
Yeah.
There we go.
Thank you, control room.
There is the GOP field. And remember, 8% of the vote in. All we have done thus far is call this for Donald Trump at the top. It's the remaining part of the race that is so interesting and will hold our attention the rest of the night. To Chris Matthews we go. Chris, we have not asked you to react to the story in chief here, and that is Donald Trump has won the South Carolina primary.
Well, you know, despite making every mistake by every book we all keep our own books of what you can't say. He broke all the rules. And yet, I think I looked at the numbers. There was a large male component, 57 to 43. The men went for him, much more so than any of the other candidates in that field. So men seem to like his John Wayne, I'm the boss. Who's top of the hill, whatever we call it. It's still this sort of a macho thing he's into. I still think there's a buried treasure in Trump that you may not like. I'm not sure he fully understands. It's a line he uses, which is either we have a country or we don't. It's nationalism. It's not a word we've used in this country historically, nationalism. It has to do with losing our best jobs to China, our lower jobs to illegal immigrants, fighting wars we shouldn't be fighting. And that was the last one of those that I thought it was tested very much, if he wins here in South Carolina, very much tested there, because he came out against the Iraq War. Not only did he say it was a mistake, which most people think it was in both parties and independents, but that it was based on a lie. Now, that's really tough. I think there's an argument that it was, because we've interviewed people in our program and the other folks, and certainly, you know, Rachel and the others have interviewed people that have said the evidence coming from the intelligence community said there was no evidence of a nuclear program, certainly no evidence of a nuclear weapon, as Cheney was arguing. So you could call that a lie if you want to get really tough. But I was really going far. And then it seemed he went even further and said, well, the fact is that we had 9/11 itself on Bush's watch, on a Republican president's watch. And I thought, well, that's going really far. Are they going to be able to accept that? If he wins tonight, I think the message will be, you know, they're willing to take a pretty good punch at what they did. They did not keep us safe. They're not willing to brag that anymore. And I thought that was very chancy for him. So if you put together immigration, which he started with in a rough way, building the wall and all that, And then you go to free trade and his opposition to that, saying we're losing our best jobs to China. We're going to get tough with China. And then you throw in his opposition to these wars that have really broken the spirits in many ways of the working white class in this country, the people that go in, and minorities too, of course, who go in for these prolonged redeployments. I mean, Rachel talks about the veterans. 4 times they go back over to fight these wars. People who are working class say, what has this Republican Party done for us? Have they forgotten that we're a country? And when he says things like, either we have a country or we don't, I think it still hits so hard that it makes up for his rough edges, guys.
Chris Matthews, thank you. Rachel Maddow, your name was invoked.
It was invoked.
In a very nice way.
It was. That was nice for Chris. I will agree. And you know, I will say, I think that again, the veteran community is different than previous generations of the veterans community, and I want there to be big nationwide polling of veterans in this country, so we can start talking about that in a more informed way. That's one thing. The other thing I think that's going to be really interesting to see unfold with Donald Trump ahead of this is that, you know, if authenticity is what we're talking about in this race, if that's the appeal of Bernie Sanders on the Democratic side, and that's the appeal of Donald Trump, psychologically speaking, on the Republican side, why is it that his previous liberal positions on so many issues don't undercut his perceived authenticity? I mean, everything has now been thrown at Donald Trump. You can no longer say that the field has been holding their fire on Donald Trump. They have been, and they've been hitting him for having been previously liberal and not a real conservative and not who he says he is. And it doesn't stick.
It's a rhetorical question not to be answered because we have to get to a break. We'll take another break. Our coverage will continue at the top of the next hour. We'll see if we have any further race characterizations. Donald Trump, your winner of the GOP primary in South Carolina. At the top of the hour, here is what we know on this Saturday night, election night. That is Donald Trump, the projected winner of the South Carolina Republican primary. As we've been saying, it's almost become a cliche. Completely impossible to predict just months ago. There is the rest of the field. Earlier today, in a very different operation, a party-run caucus in the state of Nevada, Hillary Clinton got the victory she desperately wanted and needed. She spoke tonight, her acceptance. Bernie Sanders gave a concession speech. It looks like we're talking about a 53-47 or thereabouts race. It's all of the other issues that remain so fascinating, so much a part of the story that is this Saturday night. We're here with you for the rest of it.
You know, the interesting thing about this unsettled race in South Carolina is that South Carolina used to be the place that ended it, right? South Carolina, it's 1980, George H.W. Bush had won Iowa, Reagan won New Hampshire, Reagan came into South Carolina and put it to bed. Dole had won Iowa in 1988. George H.W. Bush had won New Hampshire. He came into South Carolina and put it to bed. Same thing in 96. Same thing in 2000. Same thing in 2008 when Mike Huckabee had won Iowa and John McCain had won New Hampshire. Again, that split. They always split in the Republican field, and then whoever wins in South Carolina puts it to bed. That had happened every single time since the start of the South Carolina primary. Until the last one, the wild card, Newt Gingrich. Then South Carolina became something that meant who knows what in the process. The question remains whether or not South Carolina is still a who knows what this means kind of state, or whether this will be, once again, the place that settles it. I mean, on the surface, this looks like a return to form. The split in the first 2 states for the Republican field was that Ted Cruz won Iowa and Donald Trump won New Hampshire. Donald Trump has now come to South Carolina, and he has beaten Ted Cruz soundly. Ted Cruz is in a tight fight for second place with Marco Rubio. Before 2012, you would have said that means that Donald Trump is going to be the nominee. Of course, we cannot say anything that definitively tonight.
Nothing is predictable.
Things have ceased to be predictable. Even before, in 2012, things ceased to be predictable with South Carolina. But with Donald Trump in the race, really nobody can predict based on past experience.
Let's go to our political director, see if he concurs. He had better. Chuck Todd, watching and listening all this. Chuck, it is true true. The baseline claim, as I keep saying, the punditry business has been so debased and stripped down and revealed to contain nothing. No one saw the plot line of this election year. No one with a pulse. So is there anything predictable coming out of tonight?
Well, I think the voters are telling us something in South Carolina that I do think is potentially predictive of at least how you'll hear the three candidates. This is going to be a three-way race for a little while. The establishment's going to do whatever it can to will Marco Rubio into contention, whether it is second or third tonight. And Cruz has a base of support that is more solid than actually either Rubio or others that will keep him in this race. But there's one part of the exit poll to me that tells the story of this. We asked candidate qualities, right? Well, the number one candidate quality that mattered most to South Carolina was shares your values. Well, guess who won that? Ted Cruz. But the next two most important categories were who can bring needed change and who tells it like it is. Well, Donald Trump won both of those categories. Now, here's this. Rubio did win a fourth category, can win in November. So this is what you're going to have. You're going to have Marco Rubio, which is why all the money is going to go to him. He's winning the he can win in November argument. He's going to make the electability case. You're going to have Ted Cruz saying, I'm the true conservative. I'm the one that shares your values. He sort of already is connected with that. That's what this future is. And Donald Trump's making I'm the one who's going to shake things up. I'm the one who's going to be able to bring change. And obviously voters, by a long shot, are picking him. So the question's going to be, how does Rubio try to become a change agent and keep his electability? And then how does Cruz stay with the core conviction argument, but then also try to peel away Trump's change message? What's really hurt Cruz here more than anything, as far as Trump's concerned, is Trump is the outsider. Cruz was supposed to be the outsider. Trump's more outsider than Cruz is. And I think that's where Cruz is a little bit boxed in right now. Rubio, because of that electability argument and the money, I could picture him being able to sort of get some legs here a little while longer and maybe expand some on Super Tuesday. Cruz really, I think, has an extra challenge because of Trump's strength.
Chuck, thank you. If the reaction on my device is any indicator, the comment that is going to live on from tonight was made in the last hour by Nicole Wallace, a veteran of so many GOP campaign efforts. Nicole, you called Donald Trump
what did I call
the chemo of the Republican Party.
My dad won't be mad about that.
And people have dialed in on this because of the way your argument followed.
Yeah, because I think the stupid pundits, which I guess I am one, we didn't see this. We didn't understand that he was such strong medicine that the very things that we thought disqualified him. Oh, my God, you can't ban all Muslims. How will the leaders of Mideast countries come visit you for a state visit? The very things that lit our hairs on fire were the exact same things that the voters said, oh, phew, finally, someone that speaks my language sees what I see. You know, when you articulate with your crude language the disgust that the voters feel with Washington, you win the voters' trust, and they stick with you through the ups and downs in your candidacy.
And that's how a billionaire from New York, a landlord, a real estate developer, as people keep saying, thrice married, has cast himself as a character in a Springsteen song. We're going to make a last stand. Who's with me? I'm out here on the edge of town. Let's go. You know, who's with me?
Right. And that's why his supporters, you know, all these other candidates would lose support. We would rush to our, you know, tracking polls the morning after if Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio said these things and say, oh, he dipped 16 points. Trump says these things, and we go on the next morning, we're like, oh, my God. And we finally, us dumb pundits, just me, we finally say he did terribly, but his numbers will go up. You know, we figured it out more recently. And what he has is the most important thing in politics. He has the commitment and the intensity of his supporters, and they will stay with him through ups and downs. And I think if he were anybody else, we would be talking about him sort of on his way to clinching the nomination.
And because he may very well be on his way to clinching the nomination, there's a question as to how the Republican Party does or doesn't take ownership of what he says. I mean, we've got in the last 24 hours before South Carolina decided to pick him as their number one choice for president, for the presidency of the United States. We've got him tweeting, you know, would President Obama have gone to Justice Scalia's funeral if it were held in the mosque? Okay, and that's one thing if that's Donald Trump competing for the nomination. When that becomes the standard bearer of the Republican Party, what does the Republican Party do with that? Does the Republican Party coalesce around that and say, yes, that's what we believe, that's what our leader says?
Do they own it?
Do they own it? How do you not own it if you're running him for president? What happens there?
And he tweeted that just as Father Paul Scalia was delivering an emotional and deeply affecting homily. I mean, you look at the time of that tweet. So he's watching this, or someone's tweeting for him, or I don't understand the personality that is involved in that. But that tweet hits at Barack Obama on his religion, his Christian faith, and goes in so many multiple ways against Muslims, against Obama. I think what the Republican base is looking for is anyone who will absolutely be crude and rude and take on Barack Obama.
And will swear and will. I mean,
see, that's part of, I think, the strong medicine that they stomach, to get someone who is a truth teller and to get someone who is strong. They didn't like the performance on Saturday night. And you saw it in the CNN town hall where the woman stood up and said, I'm worried about your impulse control problem. I feel like you don't restrain. I think those are the sorts of things. I don't think the Republican voters want someone crude and crass. I think they're willing to take that with someone strong and clear.
The fight against Obama, though, they want someone to challenge Obama. Obama is so toxic with that part of the base.
And listen, in Clintonism, I think they correctly admire the Clinton machine for its abilities, and they think they need someone tough and who is not beholden to political correctness to beat it.
Honestly, though, what happens to comments like this? I mean, President Obama he's saying he's a Muslim. This comes right after he says, how dare anybody question another man's faith? And there's Donald Trump saying if this were a mosque, he'd be there. I mean, the Republican Party is going to have to come up with some strategy around this, because every Republican who runs for everything down to dog catcher in the country is going to be running on that platform unless there's some separation created. And if he's the standard bearer, I don't know how you win in any remotely purple state in any race anywhere in the country.
Reminds you of his comment about he could take out a gun and shoot someone on Fifth Avenue in New York.
And he says he wouldn't lose any votes.
Support.
Yeah.
Somehow this all gets us to Steve Kornacki at the big board. Steve's been crunching the numbers on second place and down.
Wow.
And look at the green for Trump.
Looks like spring in South Carolina.
Yeah, and again, I mean, we are the overwhelming story here is Donald Trump's strength across the board. And these things have been in the past very predictable along regional lines here in South Carolina. Those lines are kind of breaking away. I'll just give you an example of what I mean. You see right now, this is Charleston. This is one of the largest counties in the state. This was one of the three counties. There were three counties when Mitt Romney got blown out in 2012 that he actually carried. One of them was Charleston. Another one was right here. This is Beaufort. This is Hilton Head. Mitt Romney carried both of these. These are the most moderate Republican voters you're going to see in the state. And yet, Donald Trump is leading both of these counties right now. He's ahead by about 4 or 5 points over Mitt Romney in both of these counties. Ted Cruz is farther back. But this is the difference we're looking at with the Donald Trump. You take a look, for instance, in the counties up here, for instance. Mike Huckabee won these things big. Newt Gingrich won these things big. These are some of the most conservative evangelical counties in the state. These are the places Ted Cruz was counting on, and yet Donald Trump is winning here big. And we can also just show you very quickly, I want to just show you the breakdown here. We mentioned this earlier. Very conservative. Again, Ted Cruz winning very conservative, but Trump with more than a quarter of the very conservative vote. Then take a look at this. Somewhat conservative. Donald Trump pulls way ahead. 34%. Cruz falls back to 20. So you see Cruz's support starts to drop. Wow. Rubio sitting there at 26. Then look at this. Moderate. About 1 in 5 voters calling themselves moderate today. Again, Donald Trump 31%. Rubio 25. Look at this. Kasich up at 20 here, and Ted Cruz falls all the way back to 9. We saw this in New Hampshire in a very pronounced way, but we're seeing it here again. Donald Trump's support is across ideological lines, across geographic lines, across income lines. This right now is shaping up to be a top-to-bottom victory for Donald Trump. There's also the possibility, I could just very quickly add, that Donald Trump will win each of the congressional districts in this state.
Oh, wow, which would have a very concrete consequence, because that would mean that he'd get a much larger delegate haul out of South Carolina than just a first-place finish without picking up those districts.
Exactly.
And life gets even worse for Nicole Wallace. Life is unfair. What's really unfair is you are the existence of the Republican Party right here. You are.
I wear it proudly. But listen, his dominance really is the story coming out of this. And I think that understanding his supporters better, will serve us all moving forward, because I really don't think the Republican Party has turned crass and crude. I see it. I see it in my parents. They're willing to accept the warts to have the strength.
But if this became a two-person race, a two-man race.
That's right.
That is the solution for the other party.
That's right, and that's what consultants in the Republican establishment that are not on the campaigns. Of course, if you're on a campaign, you can't call for that. That is what they're saying tonight. That the only chance now of defeating Trump, if there is one, is if this were to be
a two-person race. As long as the two-person race isn't Ted Cruz versus Donald Trump, in which case, there's still nowhere to go home to.
And you may be wondering what they're saying at Cruz headquarters right now. Let's ask correspondent Hallie Jackson at Cruz headquarters in Columbia. Hallie?
Hey guys, so it's interesting hearing you talk when I think it was Rachel talking about the idea of a two-man race. That is something that Ted Cruz wants to see and has acknowledged they want to see. So Marco Rubio coming in the mix here could be a concern for them moving forward. I can give you some new reaction here. Cruz camp is essentially saying they're watching these returns come in just like everybody else. They believe, throwing a little bit of shade at Marco Rubio here, that even if Rubio were to come in second here, and it is still very tight, that Rubio would still be 0 for 3 basically. The Cruz response is like scoreboard here. We won Iowa. You came in 5th in New Hampshire, basically, so it doesn't matter if you don't win South Carolina. This fits with the narrative that the campaign has been trying to push all week, raising expectations for Marco Rubio. But at the same time, when you look at who's getting a ticket punched out of South Carolina, it's the top-tier candidates, Trump, Rubio, Cruz. You can hear some of the crowd cheering behind me as a different network is playing, and they're talking about Ted Cruz and going live from the room here. That's why you're hearing some of that noise, because at this point it does look like Cruz and Rubio are still locked in a battle for second place. Listen, a two-man race is where Ted Cruz wants to be. Marco Rubio looking strong in South Carolina, not ideal for them. At this point, a potential third-place finish for Cruz, although we don't know yet, could raise questions about his likability, and it highlights just how different that evangelical population in South Carolina is from the population in Iowa, which Cruz won handily. Guys.
All right, Hallie Jackson at Cruz headquarters. As we keep saying, it's the 2nd through 6th race that is proving so interesting tonight. Another break, and we'll be right back. We are back. This is election headquarters of the winner tonight in South Carolina. Trump election headquarters. We are expecting to see the candidate within about 15 minutes from right now. So we'll obviously go there the moment we see Donald Trump, and the place will presumably erupt. Welcome back. Marco Rubio has been dining out on the campaign trail, certainly peppering his speeches with the line that he is the guy the Democrats fear most. And that's going to become an interesting conversation coming out of tonight. Gabe Gutierrez standing by at Rubio headquarters tonight. Gabe?
Hey there, Brian. Well, let the spinning begin. The Marco Rubio campaign, of course, has been saying for a while that they want to finish in the top tier. And they say that tonight, finishing in the top tier would be a huge comeback. They knew they had to make a big comeback after that disappointing 5th place finish in New Hampshire. They retooled their campaign, trying to come off less scripted and actually more aggressive. For the past several days, they have really gone after Ted Cruz. It has been knocked down, drag out, and they also were able to secure some major endorsements here in South Carolina. Of course, Congressman Trey Gowdy, Senator Tim Scott, and the most important one of all, Governor Nikki Haley. And together, all of them have been campaigning throughout South Carolina over the past few days, saying, we are the new faces of the conservative movement. And as you mentioned, Brian, now they're making the electability argument. Now, a lot of his critics, rival campaigns, are saying, how can the Rubio campaign say that this is a victory if they do finish in 3rd place? They finished 3rd place in Iowa, 5th place in New Hampshire. Even if they were to finish 3rd place here in South Carolina, how is that a victory? Well, the Rubio campaign comes back and says once the field winnows, once the Republican candidates, the other ones drop out of the race, again, they feel that they are best positioned to take on Donald Trump once that Republican establishment coalesces behind them. So the Rubio campaign says they are feeling really good right now. And then moving into Nevada, which is a state where Marco Rubio has ties there. He spent part of his childhood there. Tomorrow, Marco Rubio is actually going to Tennessee and Arkansas, 2 key states in Super Tuesday before heading on to Nevada. So right now, the Rubio campaign feeling very optimistic. The question will be exactly where he finishes in relation to Ted Cruz as they are locked in this battle for second place.
Gabe Gutierrez, Rubio headquarters. Gabe, thanks.
That is a fascinating point there, and very unexpected that Rubio is not going straight to Nevada. We are in this a little bit of a weird place in that South Carolina and Nevada are both voting tonight.
What part of that weird place?
Well, weird place. Well, we're in a weird calendar place, right? South Carolina and Nevada are voting tonight.
Yeah.
South Carolina and Nevada are also voting next for the other parties. Now, why?
No more weird than anything else.
But in each individual state, you could do one election day for both parties. You could, why are these 2 states holding their elections 3 days apart in one case and 7 days apart in another case? Go fish. Nobody knows. But that is how we have decided to do it. The parties had no interest in making anything that easy or rational or cheap for anybody.
With you so far.
And so we are ahead, 7 days ahead, looking ahead to South Carolina for the Democrats. We're 3 days ahead of Nevada for the Republicans. And for all accounts, I mean, in terms of the way people have been talking about that Nevada Republican race, it has been, there's been much less of it. There just hasn't been a big presence in Nevada for the Republicans. Luckily, the dean of the Nevada Political Press Pool is on our payroll right now, John Ralston. John, looking ahead to the Republican race in Nevada, my sense is that the race there just hasn't been as evident. The campaigns haven't been as evident. Are they battling it out on the Republican side in Nevada?
They're battling it out for second place, I think, Rachel. The Cruz, Rubio, and Bush campaigns have all got great organizations here with very smart people running them. Rubio was reached out to the Mormon community here, which will have a significant percentage of the electorate on Tuesday evening when they vote here. Bush has a good organization, if that means anything, after South Carolina. And Cruz has really ramped up in recent weeks. He got the new conservative rising star of Nevada, Adam Laxalt, to endorse him. But I have to tell you, all of those campaigns privately will tell you they're playing for second place. Data I have seen, public and private, indicates that Trump has anywhere from a 25 to 30-point lead.
Wow.
So he is going to win here very big, I would guess. The only wild card is how goofy the Republican Party is here, that they've set this up on a Tuesday night in a 4-hour window with different starting times for voting in different counties, so you just never know what might happen. But even likely caucus goers are indicating that they're going to go big for Trump.
And John, just to follow up on that, if Trump really is doing so well, but with no evident campaign in the state, does that kind of break the rules as far as you understand them in terms of how a person is supposed to put together a campaign in Nevada? Is he just winning there on the strength of national media and national attention despite not really having a presence on the ground?
Well, I don't think this is endemic to Nevada, is it, Rachel? Trump has broken all of the rules of politics and to his benefit this year, and I think it's happening in Nevada, too. He has been here 3 times, I think, and he's coming back before the caucus. He's done huge rallies here. Huge, did I say that right? Rallies here, and he has gotten this. Just the fervency here is the same as it is everywhere else. And you might, in some ways, you might think that Nevada is a perfect, fertile territory for Trump, a generally uneducated electorate, people who are just mad about the federal government all the time here in Nevada in various ways. So I just think it's a great place for Trump. He doesn't need an organization. He doesn't have one. And I think he's still going to win the state fairly easily.
John, one of the things we've seen on the right in Nevada is the fight over lands, basically, over federal lands and whether or not those get to still belong to the federal government. I know Ted Cruz has made a real issue of that, going for a real hard right flank of that Nevada Republican electorate. Is he likely to make any inroads there? Is that a really fringe thing, or is that going to have any sort of sway?
That's a big issue in rural Nevada here, and you're right. Trump, showing his usual in-depth knowledge of public policy issues, did an interview with Field and Stream, clearly didn't know what he was saying and just said it's great, because he says everything is great when he's talking about it. It's great that the federal government has control of these lands. We should keep these lands great, I think, is almost the exact quote. Cruz and his people, especially Adam Laxalt, who I mentioned, the Attorney General, who was actually suing the federal government over some public lands issues, have seized seized on this. They're running a campaign commercial now in Nevada with Cruz pointing out that he wants to bring more land back into the control of Nevadans. 87% or so of Nevada land is owned by the federal government. Now, of course, it's all public land, and Ted Cruz and any other Republican who says they want to give it back to the state won't say how the state is supposed to pay for the management of it, but it is a real resonant issue in rural Nevada. Is it going to be enough to hurt Donald Trump? Come on, this is a guy who fights with the Pope. You think, and becomes a 9/11 truther, you think saying something intemperate about public lands is going to hurt him? I don't think so.
Wow.
John Ralston, excellent. Thank you, John.
As always, he's encapsulated the debate perfectly.
You think it hasn't been fun yet? We're about to get into the Bundy Ranch part of the electorate.
And the train rolls on. We are going to take another break. I should tell you that while we've been talking, Ben Carson has told his supporters it is just beginning for him and for them, and in many ways for our coverage, which will continue after a break.
After my mother.
That's not keeping
Look, I
us
won
safe.
the lottery when I was born 63 years ago and looked up and I saw my mom. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should
this
be
is
running.
not about my family or his family.
Okay. For a number of weeks now, Ted Cruz has just been telling
It's a matter of principle, and I'll tell you, when you point to his own record, he screams, liar, liar, liar.
I didn't call anybody a liar. I said,
Well, you call
maybe
Ted Cruz a liar.
Ted is a nasty guy who doesn't tell the truth.
So I think this is now a disturbing pattern.
Today, the bitter fight between Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio.
Every day they're making things up. The picture's fake.
They simply start screaming, liar, liar, liar.
Do you have to be mean against these people? What they say is so wrong.
Trump is still on the attack,
I've had great success with lawsuits.
threatening to sue the Canadian-born candidate.
File the lawsuit.
He doesn't even have the right to serve as president.
One of the things I look forward to most of all is deposing Donald Trump.
Donald Trump taking aim at George W. Bush over 9/11.
The World Trade Center came down during his reign. So,
Oh, we're going to be so nasty. I got to tell you, this is just crazy. Huh? This is just nuts, okay?
A week ago, the week that was in Republican politics. Tonight, we have a winner in South Carolina. It's Donald Trump. Tonight, the conversation will center around the viability of several candidates, among them Jeb Bush. Let's be charitable. Among the least self-aware candidates we've ever seen was talked into just this week contact lenses and out of his glass frames as a 2.0, a remaking of Jeb Bush. I don't know why I'm looking at Nicole Wallace as opposed to Lawrence O'Donnell, both of whom join us. What a week.
I would be using contact lenses if I could. I just don't know how to put them in.
You and me both.
No, obviously too late for Jeb Bush, and the big decision for Jeb Bush tonight is it over? What would be the justification for going forward at this point? You know, we are bound in the media to overreact to wins. This is not for Donald Trump a win of the majority of the vote. We've only seen that in Democratic elections since there's two candidates. That's where it's possible on the Democratic side. He's going to win about 35%. 73% in the exit poll favor Donald Trump's unconstitutional ban on Muslims entering the United States of America. He lost most of the people who favor his wildest idea. That's how challenging the Trump candidacy actually is. People agree with many of his ideas and continue to vote against him because of a lot of the things that we saw in those debates. The late deciders went heavily against him. They went heavily for Cruz and for Rubio. And so for people who spent some time wondering how much did the debate hurt him, how much did a scrap with the Pope hurt him, how much did these things, this crazy suggestion of suing Ted Cruz over a campaign ad, how much did that stuff hurt him? It probably did hurt him with the late deciders, and he still comes out with the most points on the board tonight. But he is not a decisive kind of winner that a party can look at and say, here we go, especially when the worst news for Trump in the whole week came in the NBC poll, which showed if this goes one-on-one, Trump against Rubio or Trump against Cruz, each one of them beats Trump by 16 points in a one-on-one race.
But there's never going to be a one-on-one race.
And you sound like a Democrat at the salad bar of rationalization. We have just heard Nicole talk about the long path of acceptance. Am I correct?
Yeah. Well, listen, here's the thing. There are a lot of people in the Republican Party who agree with the analysis that this crowded field has given us Donald Trump.
Well, this is just statistical. It's not something to agree with.
But I'm just saying the analysis is what angers, I think, some folks in the establishment lane who would like to see a smaller establishment group so that there could be more of a head-to-head competition. And I think coming out of tonight, that will burst into public. I think the frustration that some folks feel that Trump isn't being confronted more frontally will bubble over and be very much the public
let's just talk about that for a second, though, because the reason that there's not going to be anytime soon a Trump versus Rubio or a Trump versus Cruz campaign is because both Cruz and Rubio are drowning in money. Drowning in money, of which there is endless additional money to come. They both have separate donors. They are not competing for the same people, and there are enough rich guys to keep them both going. Those two brothers that are supporting Ted Cruz alone could keep his super PAC going from here to Mars. I mean, it really is a situation where there's no likelihood at that top tier that those guys have any reason to get out of the race anytime soon. So we are looking at Ben Carson. We are looking at Jeb Bush. We are looking at what John Kasich's path might be. And that's interesting in terms of the bottom tier and how fast this is going to shrink. But it's not going to shrink to mano a mano for a very, very, very long time.
Let us not forget that in Las Vegas, Nevada tonight, on a solo director's chair in front of the casino, so nice they named it twice. New York, New York, our friend Chris Matthews.
I want to jump in on the salad bar side with Lawrence. I do think his numbers are correct, and I think they're unimpeachable, in fact, that Trump is a minority candidate. I mean, Trump is a minority candidate right now within the Republican Party. I just think what's been said all night by people sort of intermittently right tonight on the table there, that at the desk, that Rubio's the one they're afraid of. If you're a smart Hillary person, you're afraid of the age issue. They looked, just look at the picture. She saw that picture of Rubio with Nikki Haley, the governor of South Carolina. There's something about that picture that just jumped out. There it is. It just jumps out at you in a race where you're seeing people like Trump and Hillary and Bernie Sanders running around, and with the average age of the three of them is in the early 70s. And you look at these, this is the future of the Republican Party. And Rubio has come out of a hugely embarrassing situation where he was caught behaving like a broken record, like literally on the ground, or a broken doll, repeating himself endlessly, verbatim, and yet he's come back. And so I'd be worried about that. So I think that the big story is that if Rubio is in the running and Bush has to leave and Kasich has to leave and Carson has to fade, look at the numbers and add them up, 8 and 8, add that to Rubio, and you get a lot of establishment vote there. I think Lawrence is right. I think in a long race, if Rubio can hang in there and keep, and perhaps get Sheldon Adelson's money out here from the Strip, I don't know why he's holding back, gets his money, gets all the other neocon money, he stays in the race against Trump, and they can actually beat them. It ain't table stakes anymore. They can bring in a lot new money on behalf of Rubio because he is a hawk, he's young, and the establishment has no other hope.
Nicole Wallace, will Nikki Haley ever be on a national ticket?
You know, I talked to some folks who were also interested in Nikki Haley's endorsement. The Jeb Bush folks were hoping to get an endorsement. She has a relationship with President Bush 43. She endorsed Mitt Romney. She has political courage. She is a rising star of the Republican Party, and this is not a good thing. We are not long on bright women who are as sort of articulate and principled as she is, and I think she will absolutely be in every single conversation, regardless of who's at the top of the ticket.
That said, no Republican is going to need help winning South Carolina, and there is something to be said about the vice president being chosen because they can bring along their.
You watch her on the stump. She values the diversity of what they presented to South Carolina in a way that absolutely translates to a national audience hungry for a Republican Party to sort of reach into tomorrow and make the party more diverse.
And if you're going for a state, John Kasich is the front runner for vice president on anybody's ticket.
Right, maybe even Hillary Clinton's.
My favorite theory.
Well played.
My favorite theory. 36 after the hour, coming up on 37 after the hour. Let's show again where this race stands. Donald Trump, the projected winner of South Carolina. The rest of the field is where this gets interesting. And that will shake out probably in the hours to come still.
Look at that.
Look at that second place. 42% of the vote in, 22-22, locked at the same percentage as they have been virtually all night. And then just as interesting, Bush,
bottom tier.
Kasich. Another break. We'll be right back. We have come out of a commercial break to go to Bush headquarters. You see Senator Lindsey Graham there. Jeb Bush has emerged. Let's listen in.
This is going to be short and sweet. To those who helped Jeb Bush and worked so hard on his behalf in South Carolina and throughout the country, thank you very, very much. To Jeb Bush and his family, thank you for running a race for the presidency that we could all be proud of. Thank you, Jeb, for being one of the most decent, thoughtful men I've ever met. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend for life, Jeb Bush.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Lindsey. When I began this journey in Miami, I committed that I would campaign as I would serve, going everywhere, speaking to everyone, keeping my word, facing the issues without flinching, and staying true to what I believe. For the better part of a year, I've endeavored to do just exactly that. I have put forth a vision for America that includes all, because our country deserves a president for everyone. The presidency is bigger than any one person, and is certainly bigger than any candidate. This is not, we're different in our country because our head of state is not above us, but because the head of state, the people that aspire to the presidency, are part of the people. In a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, we elect a president like us, imperfect under God's watchful eye. I've had a front row seat to this office for most of my adult life. I've seen fallible men rise up to the challenges of our time with humility and clarity of purpose to make our nation safer, stronger, and freer. I firmly believe the American people must entrust this office to someone who understands that whoever holds it is a servant, not the master. Someone who will commit to that service with honor and decency. Our next president will lead an extraordinary country whose people have always made the improbable possible in big ways and small. Every day, Americans test the boundaries of freedom and achieve more than what they could have ever dreamed. But over the last 7 years, our nation's bright light has become little more than a flicker. We have retreated from the world stage. The American values that have brought peace and opportunity are fading. That is not the America we know and love. America is a country that thinks big, acts boldly, and leads without apology. It will be up to the next president to restore that kind of leadership. I'm proud of the campaign that we've run to unify our country and to advocate conservative solutions that would give more Americans the opportunity to rise up and reach their God-given potential. But the people of Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina have spoken, and I really respect their decision. So tonight, I am suspending my campaign. No. Yeah. Thank you very much. I congratulate my competitors that are remaining on the island on their success for a race that has been hard fought, just as the contest for the presidency should be, because it is a tough job. In this campaign, I have stood my ground, refusing to bend to the political winds. We put forward detailed, innovative, conservative plans to address the mounting challenges that we face, because despite what you might have heard, ideas matter, policy matters. And I truly hope that these ideas that we've laid out will serve as a blueprint for a generation of conservative leaders at every level of government so that we can take back our country. We laid out plans on everything from reforming our tax and regulatory system to reviving our economy, to rebuilding our military, and to fixing the VA once and for all. Finally, I am so grateful to Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina here for his steadfast support and his amazing humor. He stole the line that I'm now saying, which is that he's become a friend for life. I thank all of the Jeb alumni, many of them are here, that have been going door to door all across the country, who have put their lives on hold for this cause. And I want to thank my mom and brother who came here to South Carolina. America truly loves them and respects them, and so do I. I want to thank all my family. 2.0 is always back there in the back. And to my dad, who has served as an inspiration to me. He's the greatest man alive and continues to be that way. I want to thank all the volunteers and supporters that I've met along this incredible journey, and to all the fellow grinders in our campaign, our staff, who never, ever, ever gave up. I've had an incredible life, and for me, public service has been the highlight of that life. But no matter what the future holds, here's the greatest safety landing, if you can imagine. Tonight, I'm going to sleep with the best friend I have and the love of my life. And I'm totally blessed to be the father of 3 extraordinary children, and as you might know, 4 near-perfect grandchildren. And I'll be blessed to say that I'm living in the greatest country the world has ever known. I remain optimistic, and with the right kind of leadership that we all need to work to make sure happens, America's best days are ahead. With strong conservative leadership, Republicans can win the White House, and we can get back to being on the verge of having the greatest time to be alive. And that's what I honestly believe, and I know you do as well. I look forward to working you to make that dream come true. I will do it as a private citizen, just as you are. Thank you for the opportunity to run for the greatest office on the face of the earth. I love you all. God bless you.
To dismiss what we have just seen as a lesser candidate gets out of the race would be to make a large error. This story is so much bigger than just this one man giving just this one speech this early in the contest. And that is because Jeb Bush was the Republican establishment in this race, an ascendancy to nominee so assured and so assumed a year ago that people were grousing, can we have another Bush versus Clinton going head-to-head in this race? Chuck Todd has been watching and listening with us. And, Chuck, there is even a view out there that it is Jeb Bush who gave this race Donald Trump because Donald Trump was his equal and opposite reaction as establishment candidate.
I mean, absolutely. And Trump mirrored the Jeb campaign. Jeb announced, I believe, on June 15th. Donald Trump announced on June 16th. And it was the first target of Donald Trump. And as we've seen, when Donald Trump has gone after somebody, he has won. Went after Trump, Bush was basically his first target. And he brought Bush down to size in a hurry. It's possible Bush would have been brought down to size by others. This was always a tougher hill for him to climb because he came into this race with 2 issues that were against the base of the party. One was immigration, and the other one was Common Core. And obviously Donald Trump went at him very personally. That didn't help at all. But he always still had an issue with immigration. And Donald Trump, he just took immigration and exploited it in a way that that basically Bush could never catch up. Bush could never figure out how to pivot into a change candidate. And it's really tough when your last name is Bush in an atmosphere and in a political party that was ready to move on. And it is amazing. South Carolina has been so good to the Bush family. South Carolina gave Bush the nomination in '88. South Carolina gave another Bush the nomination in 2000. And now South Carolina ends the Bush dynasty in 2016. It's quite the I guess literary ending there for Team Bush.
And a very bittersweet moment for Nicole Wallace, who's here with us in New York, so close to the Bush family, having worked for his brother. This is
worked for him. I was Jeb Bush's first press secretary when his first term as governor, and it wasn't his time. And I think a lot of people that went out on the trail could see that very early on, that the policy issues he had were a burden, his support for Common Core, his statements about immigration being an act of love. They were going to be a policy burden no matter who was sort of that outsider person, but he also became Donald Trump's foil. And he was admired by the people who watched him sort of hand to hand with voters, but he never impressed a television audience. He never dominated a news cycle, and he could never get himself on offense for long enough to create any momentum for himself.
He was that first target of Trump's. In that first 2 weeks, when Trump was at 10% in the vote, he just relentlessly went after Jeb Bush. And I remember saying on Morning Joe about 2 weeks into this, how long can Bush allow this to go on? I mean, it seemed silly. He seemed like a silly candidate, but still, the silly candidate was going unanswered. Donald Trump, classy as ever, has tweeted about the exit of the former frontrunner. He says Jeb Bush has run out of energy and dropped out of the race to be the next president of the USA. So he insults Jeb Bush on the way out the door, exactly the way he insulted him on the first day.
I think just not to lose this moment. Obviously, we're watching for Donald Trump's victory speech here, but we should also just note that that was an incredibly gracious way to get out of the race, and it was emotional. His wife there with him and crying, Jeb Bush crying. It was a very intense emotional moment.
It was old school like him. Yeah. Now to the ballroom of the winner of tonight's Republican primary in South Carolina.
Well, I want to begin by thanking the people of South Carolina. These are special people. And, you know, we got a little boost last week from a place we all remember, New Hampshire. We can't forget it. Special moment. And they sent us in here with a very good feeling, right? So I really want to thank you. My volunteers, all of these people volunteers, and they travel and they go, oh, and I say, what are you doing? And now they're going to Texas and they're going all over. Some are going to Nevada. I'll be going to Nevada. We're making a big speech tomorrow in Atlanta, and then we're going right to Nevada. And I think we're going to do terrific there. And the SEC is going to be very, very exciting. We expect to do very, very well. Very well. I want to just say thank you to my family. It's been not easy for them. They don't see me anymore. I'm making speeches all the time. And I have a great family. I really have a great family. So I just want to thank all of you. And Ivanka, you know, we have a hospital ready just in case. In South Carolina, we're going to have a baby. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So it could be any second. It could even be before I'm finished. I mean, but you know, she insisted on being here. It was so important to Ivanka to insist on being here. So thank you. Really good. And Jared, Vanessa, Don. We have a wonderful lieutenant governor who backed us very early in the process. You know Henry, right? The lieutenant governor of South Carolina. I will take him over the governor anytime because we won. We won. He can handle that very nicely. He's tough. He's very tough. Tiffany, Eric, Laura, and Melania. Melania, say something. Go on, please.
Just want to say an amazing place, South Carolina. Congratulations to my husband. He was working very hard, and he loves you. We love you. And we're going ahead to Nevada, and we will see what happened. He would be the best president.
And representing some very, very wonderful children, Ivanka, just say a few words.
Thank you, South Carolina. This is an amazing, amazing night. The momentum since the beginning of this campaign has been unbelievable, and that's because my father's message resonates so deeply with so many people. So as our family, we're incredibly proud. We're incredibly grateful to each of you, so thank you for being here to support us. And I will say this, my father is an incredibly hard worker, and he'll be working for each and every one of you. So together, we'll make America great again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, you know, I was watching upstairs, and it was really amazing to be watching what I was watching. And some of the pundits, and not, you know, overall fair, but not too much, but a number of the pundits said, well, if a couple of the other candidates dropped out, if you add their scores together, it's going to equal Trump. Right? These geniuses, they're geniuses. They don't understand that as people drop out, I'm going to get a lot of those votes also. You don't just add them together. So I think we're going to do very, very well. I think we're going to do very well. I want to also congratulate the other candidates. And in particular, I have to say, Ted and Marco did a really good job, and they did quite well, as I understand. And no, come on, just 1 minute. Come on, 1 second, right? Good. Okay, we go back to war tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning we'll be back. But I just want to congratulate the other candidates. There's nothing easy about running for president, I can tell you. It's tough, it's nasty, it's mean, it's vicious, it's beautiful. When you win, it's beautiful. And we are going to start winning for our country. We're going to start winning. Because our country doesn't win anymore. It doesn't win. We don't win with the military. We can't beat ISIS. We have great military, but we can't beat ISIS. We don't win on trade. You look at what China's doing to us, what Japan does to us, what Mexico is just killing us at the border and with trade. Mexico is killing us, absolutely. We'll do the wall. Don't worry, we're going to do the wall. We're going to do the wall, and by the way, who's going to pay for the wall? Mexico's going to pay for the wall. And it's very easy. The other politicians come down. You can't get Mexico to pay for the wall. I said 100%. We have a $58 billion trade deficit with Mexico. The wall is going to cost $10 to $12 billion, okay? Believe me, they will pay. One of the officials, actually one of the ex-officials from Mexico, had a news conference, and he announced that we will not be paying for the wall. Who does Mr. Trump think he is? They came to me, the press, these people. Look at all those cameras back there. The press came to me, and they told me that he said he would not pay for the wall. Do you have a comment? I said, yes. The wall just got 10 feet taller. It's true. And I love Mexico. I love Mexico. I love China. I love many of these countries that rip us off because we have leaders that are incompetent and don't know what they're doing. I love these countries. They're great. I have thousands and thousands of Hispanics. We're going to Nevada. I lead with the Hispanics. I'm leading in every poll with the Hispanics. They love me. I love them. The problem is that the leaders of these countries, whether it's Mexico or Japan or Vietnam, which is just doing a big number now all of a sudden, or China in particular, that's the big one. The greatest abuse of a country that I think I've ever seen financially, China. What they've done to us is the greatest single theft in the history of the world. They've taken our jobs, they've taken our money, they've taken everything. We're bringing our jobs back, folks. We're bringing our jobs back. We're going to bring them back. And I know how to do it. We've had so many incredible endorsements, and to me, getting the greatest business people to endorse me is very important. Carl Icahn endorsed me. So many others have endorsed me. And we're going to put these great business people in charge of trade. And when China wants to come and negotiate, they're going to negotiate not with a political hack, which is what they have now. They're going to negotiate with the best business minds in the world, and we have them in this country. So we're going to do a lot of beautiful work. We're going to terminate Obamacare. It's going to be terminated. It's going to be over. It's going to be repealed, and it's going to be replaced, and you're going to have much better health care at a much smaller cost, because Obamacare, if you look at the increases in your Obamacare, 25, 35, 45, even 55%. It's dead. It's not working. We're going to go to a plan that's going to be so much better and so much less expensive. So, Second Amendment, by the way, this is a room, loves the Second Amendment. Thank you, fellas. This is a room, loves and cherishes the Second Amendment. We are going to protect our Second Amendment. Totally. Common Core is gone. We are getting rid of Common Core. We're bringing education to a local level. The people in this community, every time I see them, they want education locally. The parents, the teachers, they want to do it. They don't want bureaucrats in Washington telling them how to educate their children. We spend, as a nation, more for education per pupil than any other nation in the world, not even close. More per pupil. Second place doesn't even exist. It's so different. And yet, out of 30 countries, we're ranked number 30. You have China, you have Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and then you have number 30, the United States. So we spend the most, and we're at the bottom of the heap. It's not going to happen anymore, folks. Not going to happen anymore. We are going to build our military, which I thank, because a number of the people came down and a number of the pundits in watching tonight. We love our military. We love our military. And by the way, we love our police. Our police are terrific. We love our police. They are not being treated properly. We're going to build our military so big, so good, so strong, so powerful that nobody is ever going to mess with us, folks. And we're going to buy the equipment that our generals, our soldiers, that everybody that's in the know want. We're not buying equipment that sells because they have political, because they take campaign and they give campaign contributions. We are going to get the equipment that they want, not the equipment that they're told to have by senators and congressmen in Washington. We're going to have great equipment. And the reason I can say that is I'm self-funding my campaign. I'm not getting millions of dollars from all of these. I'm not getting millions of dollars from all of these special interests and lobbyists and donors that once they get it, they literally do whatever the politicians want. That's not going to happen. And we're going to take care of our vets. We love our vets, and they're being treated terribly. We're taking care of our vets. So we're now off to Nevada. And it's a great state. We have great people. We have great people in our nation. No matter where we go. I went to Mobile, Alabama, 35,000 people. We went to Oklahoma recently, twice. 20,000 people, 20,000 people. No matter where we go, we fill up the arenas. Over here the other day, we had a 9,000. We had a 10,000. We have people. The only thing that stops the crowds are the walls, because we can't get them in. We have to send thousands of people away. Time magazine last week did an incredible cover story. They said, it's a movement, and that's what it is. It's an incredible movement with incredible people. Incredible people. It's an incredible movement with incredible people, I tell you. And whether we go, honestly, whether we go to Dallas or whether we go anywhere you say, you go to LA, you go anywhere you say, our people are incredible. And you know, our theme, what's our theme? You know it, right? Right? Our theme, which I love, may be the greatest theme of all time, right? And the word again eventually is going to come off. We're going to get rid of the whole theme because what's going to happen, make America great again, right? And the last 2 weeks, because I've gotten to see so many, I guess millions when you add them all up with all of these rooms and all of these speeches, and I've met so many people. But the people are so incredible that I've been saying, make America great again, and it's going to be greater than ever before. That's the kind of potential we have, greater than ever before. So I want to thank everybody. I love you all. Again, South Carolina, we will never forget you. We will never forget you. We will never, ever forget South Carolina. We will never forget our great volunteers. We love our volunteers. We'll never forget all of the people that have helped us so much, my family. And folks, let's go. Let's have a big win in Nevada. Let's have a big win at the SEC. Let's put this thing away, and let's make America great again. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Here's your winner of tonight's South Carolina primary, Donald J. Trump. Chuck J. Todd, what do you make of the acceptance speech?
First of all, what a bookend. Jeb Bush gets out immediately. Donald Trump declares victory. The timing of it, poetic, I think, in a number of ways. Look, that's a very confident Donald Trump. I noticed he was gracious to his two chief opponents, Cruz and Rubio. Let's see how long that lasts. I think it is essentially Rubio is going to be the one he's going to have to be the most fearful of, because the big news tonight is Jeb dropping out in this respect. It means he does have a ton of money people. Now, does money matter anymore? We're going to find out. But all of those people are going to move over to Rubio, whatever is left of this establishment wing of the party. And I think we all have to question how much juice they really have. They're going to put all their chips in with Rubio. So Rubio is going to have the resources. And seeing how that argument is framed between the two of them, and I tell you, it's going to be immigration. You know, I mean, we know where it's going to go. This is what's been Trump's strength. I mean, look at how he just does the audience back and forth. Who's going to pay for that wall? And the whole audience jumps in. And I think that's what the next couple of weeks is going to be like for Marco Rubio. It'll be interesting to see how he handles it. What is he going to do to fight back against Trump on the issue of immigration? But I keep coming back to that issue because we talk about, I can't believe Trump did this in a week that he defended Planned Parenthood, came out for a health care mandate, trashed George W. Bush. But there is one issue he is in tune with Republican primary voters, and it's immigration.
I'm thinking of the American astronaut who is spending 1 year in space. If he were up there without the ability to get news coverage and lands in Kazakhstan and someone says, oh, we should bring you up to date on politics since you've been gone.
The nominees are Hillary Clinton, and the guy's like, and then it passes out.
Chuck, I think this is all a plot to increase viewership tomorrow morning on Meet the Press.
Speaking of, our lead guest, you just saw him speak. We'll have him live first thing in the morning.
Well,
on
you don't need my help to pump up audience for Meet the Press tomorrow morning on your local NBC station.
It's been pretty good. So
Boy,
we
if I
can't
were you,
complain
I'd get
here.
to bed, start prepping for that.
You know, there has been no poll since early November which showed anybody leading in South Carolina other than Donald Trump.
Yep.
So it should not feel like a surprise. It should not feel like news that Donald Trump actually won in South Carolina. But still, it will never not be surprising to look up to that podium and see Donald Trump declaring victory. All the more so tonight to have when we have Jeb Bush leaving the race. I would just like to make one note on that money point, which Chuck was just making. It will be very interesting to see what will happen to the trail of money that has followed Jeb Bush into this race. Obviously, the way that Jeb Bush became the establishment candidate here was not just by being born Jeb Bush. It was because he raised $100 million in the blink of an eye to start off the race.
That was because he was born a Bush.
He raised, exactly. He just tapped all those donor networks. He stacked up $100 million. It was forgive me, the shock and awe strategy that his brother used in 2000 to scare everybody else out of the race. And I think the tragedy of the sort of political, the tragedy of the way the Jeb Bush campaign fell apart is the way they spent themselves into oblivion. Because if you're Jeb Bush and this race is going to have Donald Trump as the nominee, or maybe Ted Cruz as the nominee, or maybe untested Marco Rubio as the nominee, obviously that's such a fragile state that you want to still be there when that starts to come into focus so that you are still another option. And with $100 million to sit on, he should have been able to stay out till the very end. But instead, who was the #1 spender in Iowa? Jeb Bush. Who was the #1 spender in New Hampshire? Jeb Bush. Who was the #1 spender in South Carolina? Jeb Bush. When he's coming in, 4th and 6th places in all of these states.
Spending $2,000 per vote in many cases.
He should have been able, with that much money, to stay on until the very end when there was a candidate that the Republican establishment really was a little rattled by as their standard bearer. But because of the way they spent money, they blew it. He's had to get out now. He really has been running on fumes. They've got basically zero hard dollars left, and almost all of the super PAC money is gone. That was just absolute political malpractice. And whether or not you like Jeb Bush as a candidate and as a talent, the way that campaign was run is absolutely ridiculous.
But it's not about the money, Rich. It's about the strategic decision. It's what Lawrence alluded to earlier.
To spend money for nothing.
No, it's not about, I mean, they've all spent mind-boggling amounts of money.
But he spent the most.
But I think the strategic decision that will be dissected in, as people now begin the process of looking at what went wrong, will be what you alluded to. That Trump successfully branded him.
Low energy sat out there for 2 weeks.
He did, as Chuck said. He announced the morning after Jeb. He stepped on him. He rode down that escalator the morning after Jeb Bush announced. And I remember talking to them over the summer. What are you going to do about Trump? And they said, we've got to win our lane. We've got to stay focused on our lane. We think there's going to be an outsider primary and there's going to be an establishment primary. And he wasn't just winning in the money primary because he was a Bush. He was a very popular, very successful, cutting edge on Republican policies at the time governor, who is typically someone that we like. So the strategic decision that we second guessed was the decision not to take on Trump when Trump took on him.
But had he ridden along in the polls, bumping along at 5s and 6 and 7 and 8%, doing poorly in all of these states, but he hadn't spent all of his money for nothing to come in 4th and 6th places in these places, he could have just held on until deep into the race if he still had money to spend. And he could have held on through all of this stuff, let people redefine him, let people brand him. Because that stuff was a superficial insult, it would have washed off of him if the race was at a different place. But he can't last to being in a different place because his super PAC and his campaign spent all of his money like it was on fire.
Well,
he was very poorly served by his campaign.
I think the questions will be about who they targeted. I mean, those are the questions bubbling up.
They spent they spent it for nothing.
His party needs him out of the race tonight when he finished at 8%. If he hadn't spent his money, if he was hanging on to his money, and he came in at less than 8% tonight in South Carolina, his party would need him to get out. They're looking at Marco Rubio's 22. They're saying, let's add 8 to that. That's 30. What's Trump? Trump's 33. What about Kasich's 8? Let's add those 8. What's that? That takes him up to 36. You know, you add Kasich and Bush to Rubio, and you have a winner.
That's right.
You also have Marco Rubio as your candidate, though. And if the Republican establishment were in a place where they were worried about Marco Rubio, because let's say that chatty Cathy malfunction that he had at that debate was not a one-time thing, and that's going to be what he's like, and he really is desperately unprepared to be a candidate, then at that point you want somebody else to turn to. And if you look down the race and the only person still left is Ben Carson, you have not solved your problem.
Based on what you've seen on the stage, the campaign stage, would you rather be backing Bush or Rubio in the general election?
Ask me in 4 months.
Okay.
Chris Matthews, if you can hear me in Las Vegas, we're coming to you after we hear from Marco Rubio. Among the first and largest embraces was Governor Nikki Haley behind him. Let's listen to Marco Rubio.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I want to begin by congratulating Donald Trump. We haven't had a chance to speak yet. He won here tonight. But after tonight, this has become a three-person race, and we will win the nomination. I also, a few moments ago, got to see on television, I have not had a chance to speak to him yet, Governor Bush and his announcement. I have an incredible affection and admiration, not just for Governor Bush, but for his family and for their service to our country. Jeb Bush has many things to be proud of. He is an extraordinary husband. He's an extraordinary father. He was the greatest governor in the history of Florida. And I believe and I pray that his service to our country has not yet ended. And I thank Jeb Bush for everything he's did for the state of Florida and for running a campaign based on ideas. And I pray for him and his family tonight as they move forward in other endeavors in their life. Tonight here in South Carolina, the message is pretty clear. This country is now ready for a new generation of conservatives to guide us into the 21st century. For the time has now come, after 8 years of failure, to return to the Constitution of the United States that made us the freest people that have ever lived. The time has now come for leaders that will re-embrace free enterprise, which made us the most prosperous people that have ever lived. And the time has come to rebuild our military, because the world is a better, a safer, and more stable place when we are the strongest military in the world. We as a nation have faced troubling times before. In fact, 36 years ago, this nation faced a period of doubt. After a failed presidency, it felt like America was in decline, our economy was stagnant, and the American dream felt like it was slipping away. And then we elected a president that inspired us, a president who asked us to remember who we were and who believed, as we do, that America's greatest days always lie ahead. Ronald Reagan made us believe that it was morning in America again, and it was. Well, now the children of the Reagan Revolution are ready to assume the mantle of leadership. Now, those of us who grew up when it was morning in America and Ronald Reagan was in the White House are ready to do for our generation, are ready to do for the next generation what Ronald Reagan did for ours. And who is this conservative movement in the 21st century? Because our principles remain the same. But who are we? My friends, the 21st century conservatives are the son of a single mother who grew up in poverty and was almost lost. And today he serves this state as its junior senator, Tim Scott. The 21st century conservative movement is the daughter of immigrants from India who wanted desperately for their children to have all the opportunities they never did, who faced a string of prejudice, and yet because of the greatness of our country today, Nikki Haley is the governor of a state where it's always a great day. And the 21st century conservative movement
is the son of a bartender and a maid from Cuba, who tonight stands one step closer to being the 45th president of the United States of America. We are a nation and a people that celebrate success. We are a nation that admire people that have worked hard and moved ahead. And as conservatives, we will always celebrate success. But we fight for those who are still trying to make it. If tonight you are that single mother who has made it the purpose of your life to leave your children better off than yourself, in the 21st century, we conservatives will fight for you. If you are watching tonight and you are that father that works 2 jobs so that your kids could have all the chances you never did, in the 21st century, we conservatives will fight for you. If you're the 17-year-old high school student who wants a big future, and so you get up well before dawn to take 2 buses to a better school halfway across town, who gets home late at night to do homework because you know that God has made you for more than what people around you tell you you are made for. In the 21st century, we conservatives will fight for you. We will fight for you because we come from where you are now, because we live the way you live now, and we know that limited government and free enterprise and a strong national defense is a better way forward for you, for me, for us, and for the United States of America. Tonight, to those watching at home, I ask you to join us in this effort. This has been a long road. There were many people on this campaign when it first started, many good people, many of whom in any other year would have been a front runner. But now, practically speaking, it's down to 3. And I know that our campaign gives us the best chance not just to come together, not just to unify our party, but to unify our country and to grow this movement. I ask you to go on our website. If you're watching tonight, I ask you to go on our website right now, marcorubio.com, and join our campaign. "60 years ago, a young couple from Cuba came to America in search of a new beginning, a second chance, a fresh start. And America changed their lives. Of course, I'm talking about my parents. Yeah. Spoiler alert. 10 days ago, their son arrived in South Carolina after a difficult election in New Hampshire in search of a new beginning and a fresh start. And many thought it was over. Some had doubts about whether we would wind up here even now. For me, the state of South Carolina will always be the place of new beginnings and fresh starts. I know that God's hand is on everything. And so whatever God's will is in this election is what will ultimately happen to us and to our country. But if it is God's will that I should serve as the 45th president, if it is God's will that we should win this election, then history will say that on this night in South Carolina, we took the first step forwards in the beginning of a new American century. Thank you, South Carolina. Thank you. God bless you.
You would think we had called second place. We have not yet, but Marco Rubio has a lot of reason to be happy for tonight's result, especially coming off the week he had after a bad debate appearance. Chris Matthews has been so patiently waiting in Las Vegas. Chris, as we look at this scene on stage, this is the candidate you have been talking about the most, vis-a-vis the candidate the Democrats fear the most, Marco Rubio.
I think he's the biggest remaining threat to Donald Trump. I think they may be equally balanced in terms of their strengths, but I think he's the future, and I think he would be the best bet if you're a money guy out there to put your money on against Trump. I also think he's the best argument for Hillary Clinton because age matters. If you imagine him going up against Bernie Sanders in a general election, you've got to give it to Rubio. He just looks like the president of the looking ahead. Bernie turns 75 in September. This guy's sort of the average age, if a bit below the average age of the presidents we elect. He just looks good on the stage. He has recovered, as he said. He's a man of patriotism. And I also have begun to hear the phrase he's going to use to scare, well, maybe the Democrats out of nominating Bernie Sanders or go after him if he does get nominated, free enterprise. You've heard that again tonight a number of times. He's clearly running against the guy who's proud to call himself a democratic socialist. So he's ready ideologically. He's ready politically now, claiming a big comeback here. And he's also a man of spirituality. I think he's very religious in a quiet way. And I think that's going to give him a lot of confidence going into these big fights with Trump in the SEC field of combat.
Chris, to you, I said this earlier tonight. While the Democrats have their own gender gap and age gap, I think there is an excitement gap in this race. And I think the Republicans own the excitement of this race.
Well, certainly there's nothing like a Trump rally. There's nothing like a Bernie rally. So in a sense, they're both offering shake-ups of the establishment, one more ideological than the other. One's more the great man theory. I mean, make America great again by putting a great man in the White House is really what Trump is saying over and over again. It's almost Napoleonic. I am a Perón. My person will change this country. By being in the presidency, things will happen because I'm there. Bernie Sanders argues things will happen if we shift over to a more social democratic approach to government, not being fearful of government, but using it for redistributive purposes, for health care, for education, for retirement, all the good things we believe in, but putting more oomph into them. What Rubio's offering is old-time religion, if you sense. Patriotism, free enterprise. We can do it gung-ho. We're all immigrants together. We can make this country great again because we want to. You know, this race is really beginning on the Republican side to look like a slow-motion version of an old-time political convention, where one candidate comes into the convention with the most delegates. The one in second begins to move up a bit, but neither can really gain. And all of a sudden, a third one comes along and begins to pick up, and then by the fifth or sixth ballot, that guy or woman is the leader. And so I think what you're looking at, if you're betting on Rubio, and I am betting on Rubio to do well here, is a dynamic that goes among the three guys. Eventually, Cruz fades, Trump fades. He moves up as the middle-of-the-road alternative, a Republican that most Republicans can live with.
All right, Chris Matthews has been around the business of politics a long time. Chris, thanks. We're waiting to pounce on the Cruz speech when he comes into the ballroom. In the interim, we will take a quick break and come right back with our live coverage. The first result we called tonight was the caucus in Nevada for the Democrats for Hillary Clinton. Then NBC News projected the winner in South Carolina, Donald Trump. That is all we have called, and this could go a while. Second, third place, there's nothing separating the two in terms of percentage. So just a reminder that the race below Donald Trump is still open. And we just heard from Marco Rubio, sounding for all the world like he'd been awarded second place. Still up in the air. We're waiting to hear from Ted Cruz. And as you heard, because the stakes feel so high tonight, because from this field, from all of what we've discussed tonight, will emerge the next president of the United States. The departure of Jeb Bush had an emotional value beyond the departure of Jeb Bush from the race. Kerry Sanders is standing by with some folks at Bush headquarters on that very topic. Kerry?
Well, as you can see, they've closed the partition into the room. The room is empty where Jeb Bush gave his speech, and most of those who had gathered here have left. Of course, Jeb Bush was the punching bag for Donald Trump from the very beginning, and now the question becomes for Jeb Bush supporters, like Jeannie Farmer, who's here with us, if Donald Trump becomes the eventual nominee, can you support Donald Trump?
Not me personally.
Because?
The office of President of the United States should be a position of dignity and respect, and Donald Trump does not exemplify somebody of character. He is not somebody who, if I were to vote for him, I couldn't explain to my two young boys why I voted for him, because he's not a man that I respect. He is a man who has trashed women and Muslims and people of multiple faiths and religions. He's in a fight with the Pope. He's a bad choice from his character perspective.
Where does that leave you as a Republican then if he turns out becoming the nominee?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I joke with my husband about possibly moving out of the country, but that's mostly a joke because for the most part I love our country and America and where it's going. I'm just not sure whether I don't know. I don't know.
Could you support either Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton?
Over Trump? Yes, I can.
And you're a Republican?
Yes.
And this is all based on what you've seen during the campaign. I mean, why isn't he saying Jeb Bush? He's saying Jeb. Why is he with his mommy? One of the tweets said campaigning. Why is he taking his glasses off? It's all that sort of tenor?
Yes. I mean, he acts like my kids did when they were 2. You can't throw a temper tantrum and I think you're worthy of my votes. I mean, it'll take one person from a different country when he's elected to office, and Trump's going to throw a temper tantrum, and are we going to have a war all of a sudden because he didn't like what somebody said?
Are you wondering about a third-party candidate?
Yes, there's already talk that if Trump were to become the nominee, that somebody else would jump in. And I'm going to cling to that hope right now that there's somebody might get in as maybe a third-party candidate. Or
like who? I mean, I guess I would say Michael Bloomberg to you is the question.
I don't know him personally. Obviously, he hasn't been vetted by the media or the voters. So I'd like a little bit of a chance to get to know him before I'd say I'd vote for him for sure. But certainly he appears to be a better option than Trump right now.
Okay. Jeannie Farmer, thank you very much. A Republican saying some things that some others in the room here had to say as well. Very much stung by the relationship and what developed between Donald Trump and Jeb Bush during this campaign. And of course, now it's for Donald Trump and the remaining candidates to see if they can eventually win this. And I guess it really works out, Brian, that we always see that in the campaigns, in the primaries, the candidates always take each other down, and then the supporters and the voters eventually coalesce around one person. At least listening to Jeannie here, that's not going to happen, at least with her and some others in the room, with Donald Trump.
Kerry, thank you. Our thanks to her as well.
Fascinating. I will say, talking to people in New Hampshire who are undecided voters, I heard a lot of crossover interest. With Donald Trump as such a factor in the Republican race, much more than I expected. When I was talking to people who were making up their minds at the last second in New Hampshire, and New Hampshire ended up going for Donald Trump. People who were not interested in him were interested in conservative Republican candidates, in more moderate Republican candidates, and potentially in either Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton. And there is something about him that is cross-ideological in a way that absolutely works for him, but also means that the opposition to him could cut in such unpredictable ways.
And you don't know how that would cut. But, the headline out of there are two huge headlines out of South Carolina. One, Donald Trump won. I mean, he did. And he creamed him. Yeah. He won by a substantial margin. The other big headline to me is the end of the Bush dynasty. I mean, and that's huge. This is one of the most consequential families in American history.
And to have had it happen in South Carolina with both Poppy Bush and W having won twice in South Carolina, and then for Jeb to not just lose there, but for Jeb to end his hopes there, it is Shakespearean. It is almost impossible.
I have to say, though, I mean, the Bushes are at their sort of core very pragmatic and sophisticated political strategists, and I think that they would appreciate paying some attention and giving some credit to the campaign run by Marco Rubio. I mean, he is the kind of candidate. Jeb Bush was one of his mentors and sponsors in Florida state politics. There is very much about the Bush legacy that is alive, and Rubio is very promising. Whatever happens tonight, Rubio is clearly seizing the establishment mantle, and his candidacy is exciting. I mean, we talked at the beginning of the night about his rebound. everyone talked about his disastrous debate performance. It was one of the biggest flops.
And then his fifth place results in New Hampshire.
But he corrected himself so quickly, and this is sort of a campaign where everything washes out. Every sin washes out in the hot water wash. And Rubio has completely cleansed himself of a debacle of a debate performance, and he's on the rise. And I tell you, in conservative media circles, there is a knife fight underway between those who are advocating for Cruz, who is the purest ideological conservative, those who are excited by Trump sort of burning down everything and starting over, and those who see in Rubio, particularly on national security. What's interesting to me about the top three finishers, Trump has really no record on military matters. He said that he gets his military advice from the generals on the shows.
Yep.
Cruz has a very mixed record on national security. He's voted, he's done some things that make people question his commitment to a really robust intel policy along the lines of what Bush and Cheney put in place and Obama largely left in place. Rubio really does have the mantle of traditional, strong national security, and a lot of Republicans are excited about Rubio. So I think Republicans, and Brian, you keep talking about the enthusiasm gap. People are excited because there really is something for everyone on the menu now.
There is an enthusiasm gap. Republicans are voting in huge numbers. Democrats, not so huge.
And they really like their guy, you know.
But, you know, Rubio could be the up-and-comer. He could be the eventual nominee. At some point, he's got to win a primary.
Absolutely.
At some point,
right now,
he's got to win.
the second place fight in South Carolina is very much too close to call, with 94% of the vote in. Both Rubio and Cruz at 22%. We saw a triumphant speech from Marco Rubio just moments ago. And now we are about to hear from the man who he's effectively tied with for second, Texas Senator Ted Cruz.
The great state of South Carolina. Friends, once again, we have made history. You, the good people of South Carolina, and our incredible volunteers all over the country, continue to defy the pundits and to produce extraordinary results. Let me say a word about Governor Jeb Bush, a man who had a terrific record as governor of the state of Florida, who brought job creation and education innovation to the people of Florida, a man who ran a campaign based on ideas, based on policy, based on substance, a man who didn't go to the gutter and engage in insults and attacks. Governor Bush brought honor and dignity to this race. Tonight he has suspended his campaign, but Heidi and I give our very best to Jeb and Columba and their entire extraordinary family. We wish them the best, and we thank them for their remarkable campaign. I want to thank our tremendous team here in South Carolina, Congressman Jeff Duncan, Congressman Mark Sanford, and former Attorney General Charlie Condon, Senator Lee Bright, and Representatives Bill Chumley and Wendy Nanny and Gary Smith and Mike Burns and Jay Jordan. And Ray Nash and Pastor Mike Gonzalez. And heroic volunteers like David Helmer and David Aguilar and Sean and Kay Meyer and all 7 of their terrific kids. And the nearly 500 South Carolina pastors that endorsed and joined this campaign. First Iowa, then New Hampshire, now South Carolina. Hey! We don't know the exact results right now. Right now, we are effectively tied for second place. But each time, defying expectations and causing the pundits Indeed, the screaming you hear now from across the Potomac is the Washington cartel in full terror that the conservative grassroots are rising up. But before we reflect on what we have together accomplished, I'd like to pause for a moment of silence in honor of a great man, an American hero, Justice Antonin Scalia.
Father God, we refuse to be silent. Father God, we reject silence and pray out loud in your name. Father, we pray for this man, Jesus, we ask that we never be
Today, I attended Justice Scalia's funeral. I had the honor of knowing him for 20 years. He was brilliant, principled, faithful, and a ferocious defender of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. As Ronald Reagan was to the presidency, so too was Justice Scalia to the U.S. Supreme Court. His passing 1 week ago today underscores the enormous stakes of this election. It is not just one, but two branches of government that are at stake. And Justice Scalia's replacement will not be decided by the Washington power brokers. It will be decided by we, the people. This election will be a referendum on the Supreme Court. That's right. And I'll tell you this, I cannot wait to stand on that debate stage with Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders or whatever other socialist they nominate. And make the case against their radical vision of the Constitution that would strip away life and marriage and religious liberty and the Second Amendment and the basic rights of every American citizen. In Iowa, they said it couldn't be done. And we won. In New Hampshire, they said a conservative, a Bible-believing Christian could not compete. And we defied expectations. And tonight, despite millions and millions of dollars of false and nasty attacks, despite the entirety of the political establishment coming together against us, South Carolina has given us another remarkable result. Together, Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina tell us three things. First, that conservatives continue to unite behind our campaign.
That's right.
If you are a conservative, this is where you belong, because only one strong conservative is in a position to win this race. Second, we are the only campaign that has beaten and can beat Donald Trump. That's why Donald relentlessly attacks us and ignores all the other candidates. Now, I congratulate Donald on his victory tonight. But I will say this to the people of America. If you don't believe that Donald Trump is the best candidate to run against Hillary Clinton in November, if you believe we need a strong contrast with the Democrats, then we welcome you aboard our team. We welcome you to be part of the over 200,000 volunteers and the over 980,000 volunteers' contributions at tedcruz.org. Join us at tedcruz.org. The third lesson of Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina is that only one candidate remaining has a consistent conservative record. Other candidates engage in nonstop personal attacks. We have not, and we will not respond in kind. There is a reason other candidates resort to insults, and it is that they cannot defend the substance of their record. There is only one candidate who has led the fight against amnesty. Who has led the fight against Obamacare. Who has led the fight to defend life and marriage and religious liberty. Who has led the fight to protect our right to keep and bear arms under the Second Amendment. Who will fight to pass a simple flat tax and abolish the IRS. Only one candidate has stood up to the corrupt deal-making in Washington, said no to the corporate welfare, and indeed only one candidate took on the ethanol mandate in Iowa and won. As president, I will rebuild our military. Stand unequivocally with the nation of Israel. And utterly destroy ISIS. Together, We will secure the borders and keep America safe. And I give you my solemn word that every justice I appoint to the U.S. Supreme Court will be a principled constitutionalist who will be faithful and will vigorously protect the fundamental rights of our children and grandchildren. When I look at our young daughters, Caroline and Catherine, I know that I will fight with every breath in my body to ensure that they enjoy the same fundamental liberties that all of us have been blessed to inherit. It's why I fight. It's why everyone here fights, because we love our children and we will not go quietly into the night and give up on a brighter America. And now the race turns to Nevada and to Super Tuesday and the so-called SEC primary. And Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina have given the voters a clear, defined choice. You can go with Washington deal makers, or we can stand together with a proven, consistent, constitutional conservative and bring back morning in America. Each of you is amazing, and together we will win the Republican nomination. We will beat the Democrats in November. And we will restore this last best hope of mankind that is the United States of America. Thank you, and God bless you.
If it isn't record turnout for the Republicans, it's awfully close, and Ted Cruz just became the second person to reference Morning in America, having been in a factor in Marco Rubio's speech. We still don't know who our second-place finisher is in South Carolina tonight.
Really down to the wire.
We've only declared the winner.
No, that's exactly right. And obviously, we've now got a five-man race in the Republican field, with Jeb Bush suspending his campaign tonight. Ben Carson and John Kasich at the bottom of the results, along with Jeb Bush tonight. Both Ben Carson and John Kasich have addressed their supporters already tonight, so this will be the last speech that we see tonight from Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz, again, giving sort of a long speech. Both he and Marco Rubio saying tonight that they will capture the Republican nomination. We saw Ted Cruz talking specifically about the challenges of trying to win the general election already, sort of leapfrogging to the end of that, but also looking right into the camera and asking the people of the United States of America to nominate basically somebody like him instead of somebody like Donald Trump to be the Republican standard bearer.
Ted Cruz now goes on. Both Cruz and Rubio had kind words for Jeb Bush,
yes,
who pulled out tonight.
And it remains to be seen whether or not the Jeb Bush departure reorganizes the race, either in terms of the money, in terms of a coalition candidate or a consensus candidate for non-Donald Trump supporting Republicans. Even if that is the case, it remains to be seen whether or not Jeb Bush getting out of the race, whether he had enough support and even enough donors to make a substantial difference for anybody else's chances.
Like the candidates still in this race, we keep on. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back at the top of the hour.